Good afternoon and welcome to Murfreesboro City Board of Education special call meeting. We will now call this meeting to order. And I would now ask for a approval of the agenda. Is there anything you'd like to add or take away from the agenda? If not, I will ask for a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Well, one of you.
I think I have a second.
Who made the motion so Ms. Ridley will know?
I did.
Motion made by Dr. Andrews and second by Mr. Hopper. Ms. Ridley, call the roll.
Can we just say
I got called on
Dr. Andrews?
aye?
Dr. Buckner?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Duggan?
Yes.
Mr. Hopper?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
yes. And at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion for the approval of the minutes of the August 3rd special call meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I've had a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
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 Thank you. It is with great pleasure tonight that we will start our interviews with search firms. And the first one on our agenda for tonight, I'd like to introduce Dr. Tammy Grisham, the Executive Director for the Tennessee School Boards Association. Welcome. Dr.
Thank you,
Grisham.
Chairman Wade and members of the board. Appreciate you inviting us to come and present to you our search process. If you would, please, each of you have a packet at your table. If you will turn to page 6, I'm going to start kind of in the middle of the brochure. Most people want to start with the cost first, so let's just go on and get that over with, and then we'll entertain questions. Our search process has 3 plans that you can choose from. Plan 1 is $5,000. That plan includes us developing a brochure for you with the board giving us what the criteria needs to be for your new director of schools. We will distribute that brochure for you to the Southern region. We will email that, we mail it, we fax. We have found that with our new technology age, we can get advertisements out much quicker by the use of email, and a lot of our state associations that post advertisements for us like them emailed. They put them on their website like we put the advertisements on our websites. Most folks nowadays know to come to our website for all the superintendent vacancies. Whether a school system uses TSBA or not, it doesn't matter to us. We will post your vacancy if you ask us to on our website free of charge. But of course, all of the school boards that use our services on our website with the brochure. We will, in Part 1, recruit candidates according to the criteria that the board adopts. It will be up to the board to tell us how many finalists that you would like to have. I have done searches where school boards have asked for 3. I've had 4 and 5. 5 is the most. I don't think that you want to get more than 5. It's hard to find time as a school board to interview. If you're going to interview more than 5, a lot of times you might as well just interview everyone that applied, because the candidate pool is very slim, as is your candidate pool for teachers. The candidate pool for superintendencies is the same way. The last several searches that we have done, that we have received on an average of about 10 applicants. The last search that I did, I stayed on the phone recruiting, and it's just hard to recruit folks for the superintendent. I think there's several reasons for that. Number 1, it's a thankless job. It's a tough job, even with the No Child Left Behind mandates that are coming about. With eventually all of our school system are going to be on the list. There's just no way we're all going to be at 100%. We've got new standards that are out. They came out this school year, as you're very well aware of. That's going to make the scores even lower next year. You got new standards. The tests are going to be different. Going to be testing different. Not that our children are not learning. It's just this year is going to be our new baseline. We have nothing to compare to. So this school year that we've just started will be the new baseline for the state. So I think there's a lot of factors in for reasons. There's a lot of our baby boomers are retiring, and there just really isn't you may get a lot of applicants, but applicants that have the criteria that you want in a director of schools are not always the same. So our average has been 10 applicants for some of our searches. We will assist in Plan 1 with the superintendent's contract, helping you once you decide on a candidate. Will help you in that negotiation process and getting a contract in place with the new director. That's Plan 1. Plan 2 is our most used process, and that's where we come into your community and we meet with everyone that will meet with us. But we set aside meetings to meet with principals, central office staff, teachers, your mayor, your city council, your business leaders, community leaders, PTA. We will set bus drivers, custodians, cafeteria workers. Everyone in your system and community that we can meet with, we will come in and meet with. And at each meeting, we set aside an hour for each group, and we ask each group the same questions. We ask them 3 questions. What are the good things going on in Murfreesboro City Schools that you'd like to see continued? Number 2, what are the problems or challenges a new director would face coming into Murfreesboro? And 3, what are the personal characteristics you'd like to see in a director? I think this is, whether you use us or not, I think this is a very important piece for a school board that gets community involvement. You get everyone involved in the beginning of the search process. They feel a part of the process, and then throughout this process, we encourage you to keep those groups involved all the way through to the very end. So that's the main difference in part Plan 1 and Plan 2. Because what do we do with the information that we collect from these meetings? We'll come back and give you an interim report that'll have group number 1, principals, and what they said. We don't list people's names. I don't need to know who people are. I'll tell you the group that said it and what they said. Also at each meeting, we will pass out a form that has about 27 characteristics on it, and we'll ask them to rate the importance of those. We'll take the comments and then we tally the form, and we will develop a set of criteria for you. So it may end up that in your district, the most important thing is you want someone with a strong financial background, or you want someone that's a people person. Typically when we do these, the same 10 to 15 items always. Everybody pretty much wants God to be their superintendent. We've not been able to get him to take one of these jobs, but everybody wants the person to be everything. But the items that typically always come up is people person, visible, good communicator, good financial background. Those are the type of things. I will bring that back to you and say, this is what I heard. From what I heard, I am suggesting to you this set of proposed criteria. You all can look at it. You can accept it as is. You can add to it. You can delete, whatever. It's up to the board to decide on the criteria. Once you have the criteria, I will take that. Now we're back to Plan 1. We'll develop the brochure. We'll send that out, start advertising. Whatever timeline that I establish with the board, we'll set the deadlines when applications are supposed to come in. Once the deadline's passed, I'll get a screening committee at our office. We'll screen the applicants, and then we will match the applicants to the criteria that you adopted, and then come and present to you the finalist. And that's whatever number you all decide. We recommend, once you have your finalists, that you bring in each candidate in for an entire day. First of all, the candidate is trying to sell themselves to you, hire me, but you as a board and a community need to sell your community to these candidates to make them want to come into your school system. So that's why we suggest that you bring in each candidate for an entire day. Start off in the mornings, have 1 or 2 of the board members maybe pick up the board member. You could take turns, meet them for breakfast. Then have someone, we recommend a real estate person or someone with the chamber to take them around, do a whirlwind tour of the community, show them the schools, show them the housing, If there's someone that's not from within your school system and there's someone that's outside of your school system, they need to see what your community looks like and your housing options. Then we suggest that they meet with those same groups that I met with earlier to develop the criteria. Start off with the principals in the morning in the central office, give them an hour. Let the candidate say, "Hi, I'm Tammy Grissom," tell a little bit about me, and then let the candidate, let the audience entertain questions to the candidate. That way, all the participants in your community gets to meet the candidates, and they can ask each candidate a question. And then that evening at 5:30 will be the actual interview of the board. And that, of course, is when we will excuse me, take your criteria that you adopted, and we'll develop a set of questions for you that are related to each of your criteria. And you can use them if you choose to. You can come up with your own questions or a combination, but that's part of our service, is to help you with the questions. And we recommend that you use the same set of questions for every candidate, and that you, thank you. I have been in a governor's meeting for 2 days talking, and you know I like to talk, so I think I've talked a little too much. Thank you, Kelly. So back to the process of, so each candidate comes in for an entire day, and I think it gives the candidate a look at the system, the people that they will be working with, the community that they will be living, and if they have children. I would want to see that if I were a candidate where I was moving to, if I were not somebody that already lived here. So that is a quick synopsis of Plan 2. Plan 3 is a national search. The only difference in Plan 3 is we'll do some national advertisement that costs more money to do the advertisement. Some of our large systems will pick the national search. But when you put things on your website, you pretty much have a national search anyway when you put it on your website. And once you email stuff out, even though folks will choose Plan 2, other states get on our website and apply for things, and then it does become a national search without you paying for a national search. But we had some of our school boards ask that we have a Plan 3, which is a national search, and so that's why we did it. We listened to our members' needs, and that's why there's a Plan 3. So with that was a quick, but I thought there would be more questions, give you time to ask me questions.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure if there was anything you wanted to say about TSBA, if you want to take a couple of minutes to say something about the organization, you can, or I'll go right into the question.
TSBA is a nonprofit private organization that represents all the school boards in the state of Tennessee, and we provide services to school boards in areas of policy, planning, promotion, any aspect of a school board operation. We are there. We are your professional organization.
As I read these to you, if it's something that you didn't quite get that I've said, please ask me to
Okay.
go back and repeat it, because some of the questions may have 2 or 3 parts to it. Who are the individuals that will actively conduct the search for your firm? What is their background and experience? Is this their full-time job? And are they in attendance at the presentation? And if not, why?
I conduct the searches along with Randy Bennett. He is our deputy exec and general counsel. He is not here because I chose to take the lead on this particular school system because Randy's wife is an employee of your school system. So that's why I am taking the lead if you all choose to ask for our services. Randy's background, he's been a former school board member, a police officer. He has his law degree. He's worked at our association for over 10 years. I have been at the association for over 20 years. I have an education doctorate, and I've worked with school boards for 20 years, been doing superintendent searches, board retreats. So that's my background. I have a teaching background. I have 2 wonderful kids that are gifted. No, they are gifted. I was hoping to get a little chuckle after that. But yes, but that's why he's not here. But it will be the two of us, are the two in our office, and no, ma'am, that is not our only job that we do. I wear several hats at the association as well as Randy. Being our attorney, we both do retreats, we both do training, we both do searches. So this is not my full-time job, just to do searches.
Thank you. Please talk about your experience with placing candidates in urban systems as opposed to other kinds of committees. I'm sorry, communities. Sorry about that.
Most of our school boards in the state are small and rural school systems, so our experience is obviously going to be that we do a lot more rural than we do urban, because there's only about 6 urban school districts in our state. We have done the Shelby County search, is urban, and Jackson-Madison County searches are the 2 urban.
What is your retention rate for directors that you have placed?
Retention would be, on the average of any superintendent now, is an average of 4 to 5 years. But I don't have the exact. We have done so many. I would honestly would have to go back and look at each system that we've done to see how long that those superintendents have been in those positions. I don't have those. We've done quite a few, so I'd have to go back, and so I wouldn't give you any inaccurate information.
All right. What distinguishes your firm from other firms?
I think that our firm, we don't go out and try to sell this service. Our service is what it is. It's a service that we offer to school boards. The reason I'm here tonight, I was asked to submit our search process to the board. You all ask us to come. If you choose us as a search, it's because you want us to help you. Otherwise, we're here to help you. Even if you pick some other search firm, you as a board need to pick the firm that best suits this board's needs in your community. And whether it's us or someone else, we're still your professional organization, so we're here to help. But I think what distinguishes us is we deal with school boards all the time. That is our membership, is school boards, and we deal with superintendents probably more than we do with school boards, because that's school board's one employee, and so they call us all the time asking us questions, legal questions, board operation questions about rules and regulations. So I think that's what makes us different from the other firms.
Thank you. If expenses will be charged in addition to your firm's fee, please provide an estimate of expenses incurred in similar searches.
TSBA will not charge you any additional expenses. If you choose Plan 2, we will bill you $8,500. Now, will the board incur some other expenses? If you bring candidates in, and if they're not from here and you need to provide hotel accommodations, pay their travel expenses, that will be an expense of the board. But as far as TSBA, no ma'am. $8,500 or $5,000 will be what we will charge you.
Will you negotiate your fee?
No ma'am.
What are some other typical expenses that we should anticipate having to pay in addition to your basic fee? You kind of touched on that, but would you like to say a little bit more?
Well, when we host these community meetings, if you choose Plan 2, we recommend that one of the meetings you meet with the mayor, the city council. We suggest you do a luncheon, so either the board will pay for that, or a lot of times school boards get the PTA to provide that, or the chamber, but that could be a cost. And then once again, the cost, if candidates are not from here and you bring them in to interview, you will, I would think, would definitely want to pay their expenses for getting here and their hotel and any meals that they might have. You will also, if you choose the process, we have each candidate, when you interview, we suggest that night you take a break, have dinner, and then complete your interview. You will have the cost of those meals as well.
If a vacancy occurs during the first 2 to 3 year period following the employment of a candidate, recommended will your firm go through the process of recommending other candidates with no additional charge to Murfreesboro City Schools?
Yes, ma'am, and that's listed on page 6 as well under guarantee.
Thank you. How do you define recruit candidates in your commitment to recruit qualified applicants as used in your proposal?
We recruit by, I have contacts in every state. Every state has a school boards association that I have contacts with that I call. I also have a lot of contacts within the state, being the State Department, the State Board, all the superintendents in the state. So anyone that applies here in Tennessee, I will know their superintendent, which will know the principal. Somebody will know them. So that's the process we use to recruit. After I get your criteria and see what you're looking for, I try to find the candidate that best meets that criteria. But a lot of folks will ask about also our reference checking. Anybody that produces a resume is going to list references that are going to say something good about you. So we don't call those. So if someone says, oh, TSBA didn't even check my references, that is correct. I don't call people that are listed on their resume. They're going to say something good about them. We know folks that know someone about them, that you get an accurate, not that the folks listed won't give you an accurate, but it's going to be a biased reference. So we have ways of finding out about the experiences, because you may have a very impressive resume, but it doesn't mean you're going to make an excellent superintendent. It takes a unique person to be a superintendent, and not all of us have the skills to be an excellent superintendent.
Do you actively seek highly qualified candidates from other systems? If yes, in the same state or not?
In Tennessee, yes, we'll recruit in Tennessee and other states. If you say you want to just a search in the southern region, we'll stay within the southern region. You all dictate where I conduct the search. Some systems have asked us, they just want somebody from Tennessee. We've actually had a few school boards that said just do the search in Tennessee, so I won't go outside of the state. I wouldn't recommend that, but
There's a question, on this one, there's a question on the floor.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips, you had a question?
Yes, Ms. Grissom, Dr. Grissom, let me make sure I understand. You actively call other superintendents who are currently employed within the state if you think they would match our criteria?
Mm-hmm. A lot of times superintendents will call and say, I'm looking for a different challenge, or for various reasons they may want to move. Yes, I'll call and say, would you be interested in the Murfreesboro City school system? Because I pretty much know if some of them are ready to make a change.
But people who have not indicated to you that they're ready to make a change?
No, I'll call them and ask them, do you have any principals that you could recommend, or anyone that you know? But a lot of times when I do a search, when I do these community meetings, I'll ask them, if you know of someone that you would like to submit their application, write their name on the back. And what you're probably hearing is TSBA contacts other sitting superintendents. It's because somebody wrote the Rutherford County's superintendent, this is an example, name on the back of a piece of paper. And we tell school systems, we will contact them and say, you have been recommended to apply for the Murfreesboro City superintendency.
But if no one's written their name?
If I know of someone, I might. But, I don't typically make that a practice of calling a sitting superintendent and say, would you like to go to Murfreesboro? Only if I know that they're ready to make a change or something like that. But typically, if a sitting superintendent here in Tennessee is interested in it, they will call or they'll go on and apply. But the reason you don't get a lot of them to apply is because now it's public record.
Okay.
About 6 years ago, have I gone into another question?
No, ma'am, and
Okay.
I want to caution the board. We're going to get through these questions with her. If you have a question on something she said, keep from veering in and out, mark it. and I'm just about through with the
Okay.
questions, so we'll be able to ask you some questions.
Okay.
Under that same area where we've been, I'm going to give you 3 areas, if you don't mind touching them. You've touched
Okay.
a little bit on it. How much does your firm recruit applicants in comparison to advertising for applicants? Will you recruit? And kind of what Mrs. Phillips touched on, do you only post and take applications from those interested?
We advertise, I only recruit when I feel like that after I look at the applicants, if I feel like I need to recruit, then I go and recruit. There are times when I look at the applicants and say, we got a good group of applicants that I would feel comfortable of recommending 3 or 5 candidates. If I look at the applicants and they don't match up very well to your criteria, I will go out and try to recruit.
How do you weigh questions in importance to the skills and qualifications of an applicant?
How do I weigh?
How do you weigh questions? It says, how do you weight questions? W-E-I-G-H-T. How do you weight questions in importance to the skills and qualifications of an applicant?
It depends on what the board sets as the criteria. First of all, most boards have minimum qualifications, and I'm not sure, I've not looked at your board policy, what your minimum qualifications are. I know the law only requires a bachelor's, but I'm confident that you all have higher qualifications. I will definitely, we check to make sure they have the minimum that this board requires. And then I'll look at their resume and match it up to the criteria that you adopted. So if one of the top things that you all want is someone with a strong financial background, and candidate A over here has no experience in any way with finance, that probably will not be a top candidate because it's not matching up with what the board chose as one of their criterion.
Okay. How do you value input from the stakeholders? Not about how the input is gained. Talk about how you incorporate the different or competing elements of that input into manageable criteria/vision.
The school board will be one of the groups that will meet during those community meetings with the luncheon, and we'll ask you to fill out the form just like all the other community leaders, faculty, and staff. And I try to separate the school boards, what they want in a candidate. So I will ask you all the same things. What would you like to see in a director? And I'll ask you to fill out the form to rate the importance of each of those items on that 27-item sheet that I talked about earlier.
Your job is to find quality candidates for Director of Schools for Murfreesboro City School District. If there is a person we would like to interview and is not on your preferred list, can we interview the person?
You all can do anything you like. If you ask us to do a search, we'll go with the guidelines that you've established. But as you all know, this process, you all tonight could say, we're going to interview Jane Doe over here, and you could hire her tonight. So, you know, my job is, if you choose a process where you say all candidates are going to apply through TSBA, we want you to bring to us 5. I'll bring the 5 to you. If the board decides after they interview the 5 they don't like the 5, you can either come back to me and say, could you recommend some additional? I'll either tell you yes or no. I'll say I don't have any that I would feel good about. You might want to advertise again. The board could say, we're going to interview John Doe that you didn't recommend, but it's almost the point of why did you hire us? The point of it is for us to do the legwork for you. I'm working for you, and you're hiring me to help screen those applicants. But if you choose to interview everybody that applies, that's up to you.
What do you see as your relationship with the board?
Well, I hope it's a good one. I think we have a good relationship with the board. This board's been a member of our association. I've been there 20 years, and I don't know what happened before those 20, but I would hope that it's a good relationship, and I hope the board sees that if we do the search, we're working for you, and working at the will of the board, so whatever you choose, the direction you choose, that's what we'll do. But our job is to help you to do your job, and that's why we're here.
Thank you. I'm now going to, and we'd like to do this in an orderly fashion for you, is to make sure that if some of the questions that you have answered, there may be some questions
Okay.
some of the other board members may have that they'd like to ask or get clarification on. Dr. Andrews?
If we happen to hire somebody just, we're not thinking God's going to step up and say that but suppose someone who just is really fabulous comes up and says, I want to work for you, and we decide that we want to do it. The search has already started. Is there a way to prorate your charge? If we hire somebody and you haven't finished the job we hired you to do, but we already hire someone?
You want us just to stop in the middle?
Right.
It's according on where we are in the process. So, yes, ma'am, we would
Okay.
we would work with you on that.
Are there any more questions? Ms. Thompson?
Today, there's a lot of situations where the husband and wife both are working, and I, in trying to hire some people in the past, have had real good candidates, but then after they went home and talked to their wife, and they realized that the wife had a real good job that paid almost as much as the husband did, and it was difficult to get them to move. Are you finding that to be the case?
Yes.
Is that
It's happening more with the way the economy is. It's hard to, sell a house, up and move, and then try to find a job for the spouse. It's actually happening with some of the candidates that we're doing a search for, West Tennessee system, and that's becoming more and more, because most systems want their superintendent to live in that system, and it's making it hard for candidates that really want to come and move to that system, but can't sell the house, can't find a job for the spouse. So yes, that is another factor that we're trying to work with boards to say, you might have to step back during these times, and a lot of boards have that criteria, and I understand that you want your superintendent to live here, be with the people that they're serving and working with, but in reality, it just might not happen in these times.
Thank you. Any more, Dr. Andrews?
What's the salary range that you're seeing for systems like ours?
It's totally up to you. I think y'all are 110. What are y'all paying right now?
114,
114.
is that right?
118, I believe.
Okay. I look at the state salary, and it's not always the state doesn't report exactly, and that's the only thing I have to look at. But that's about par. You all are, there's some systems that are down in the 80s, 90s, but I think that another thing you're going to have to look at is what we're finding is a lot of your principals that would make good superintendents in some of these larger districts make more than a lot of the smaller school district superintendent. So it makes it hard for people to want to leave a principalship to come be a superintendent and have a cut in pay. So I think that, I think it's an item that you're just going to have to negotiate with each candidate. It depends on where that candidate's coming from about salary, but I think this board needs to decide before you start the process at least a range that you all are willing to go with, because people want to know that. That's a question that I would get if I were your consultant from these candidates. They at least want to know a range.
Ms. Phillips?
And getting back to the process, you're going to collect criteria from various groups, get some input. I think that would be a great idea. I'm sure that the various groups would have many things in common, but let's just, playing devil's advocate, say that some of the board's criteria is in opposition to some of the other groups' criteria. How do you balance that? What do you do?
It ultimately lies with the board. Whatever the board decides is the criteria. And that's what I said. Once I get all of the comments, tally that sheet, and I bring to you what I think I heard as the average of all the comments, I will bring that back to the board as a proposed set of criteria, and we'll take each one, and if you're not comfortable with them, then you say, I'm not comfortable with number one. But ultimately, it lies with this board. You could say, we don't like any of those. We won't, and that's what I would do.
Okay.
Dr. Butcher and then Mr. Campbell.
And Tammy, I had a question about the national search. You said earlier that it seems like now, with all the technology advances, is that what you're seeing pretty much with email and the technology that we have today, that all searches have
Well, because
become national?
Exactly, because I have a contact in every state. Every state association provides, most of them, superintendent searches. So they all know to come to our website to find vacancies. And people know. I mean, other firms that do superintendent searches call us and want to use our website to advertise on, and no, we don't do that. But they know. People in the education community, if they're wanting a job in Tennessee, they know to come to the TSBA website, because that's who does most of them, and that's where we'll list them. If you all don't choose us as a firm, which that's okay, we will still list on our website that you're looking for a superintendent, and we'll direct everyone to your website for that, for free.
Mr. Campbell.
Any estimated ballpark figure time frame?
Depends on the board. Someone asked me that earlier. We've always suggested, a 6 months. The last year we did probably 8 or 9 searches last year, and I think I had 4 going on at the same time, and everybody was in a hurry, and we did them in 3 months. But like I said earlier, it's making it easier for us to do them in 3 months because of the email and internet. We can get the brochure done, and I can get it out to states within a matter of seconds.
What is the quickest you've been able to place a candidate, and what is the longest time it has taken you?
Like I said, 3 months is probably the quickest. We might have done it a little quicker than 3 months, but you got to give yourself time to at least advertise. I tell systems at least, months to advertise will get the word out there. If you can do longer, but nowadays everybody knows where to go to find the advertisement. So if you're not going to get anybody within 30 days, the likelihood of someone missing that there's an advertisement is probably very small. We've done searches where school systems took their time, 6, 8 months, had a long advertising period. I don't think I'd recommend that you take a long time. I don't think that you all want to take a long time to find your one employee that you all have to lead your school districts. I don't think it's fair to the kids. I don't think it's fair to the community. And it's really not fair to the board for you to take a very long process, because you really will get tired of the calls. I want so-and-so in this position. Have you thought of this person? We want so-and-so. You got a task at hand. You need someone. I suggest as a board you get on with your criteria, you get on with the advertising, and you will find the right person, whether it's 3 months or 2 months or 6 months.
Ms. Hopper.
I was curious, not referring to how long the search takes, but really the timing of the search, as far as we're at the time of the year when everybody's getting school going and that type thing. I was wondering if that would be any disadvantage.
Probably not the best time, because most people have just taken a position, just started with a school system, especially if a candidate, now we're back to a candidate that has family, their school has started, they'd have to move kids. But then you go back to if somebody really wants to be a superintendent and they really want to be in Murfreesboro, I'm confident that this board and that candidate can negotiate. And it may be that you find a candidate that you really like and they say, you know, I just really can't come until April, May, you know, at a spring break time, or, you know, a time that they'd give their present employer time and time to move. I mean, it's going to depend on the candidate and what their situation is. But, you know, the best time to be looking is, and this is not always going to happen, that at the end of the school year and over that summertime. But if somebody really wants to be superintendent, you'll work it out.
Any more questions?
Yeah, you know our community and our school system pretty well, and what do you think, what do you see as obstacles to us hiring the best person, and what do you see as our assets? What do you think we can sell?
Well, I think you have a great school system, a good community to live in. I would never venture to say what would be the obstacles or strengths, because I have done some searches for some systems and thought, this is a great system. We did one in East Tennessee. I thought we are going to have an abundance of applicants, and we had 11. So nowadays, it used to, back a few years ago, 10, 15 years, we would get 25, 30 applicants. We're just not seeing it. And I think people are just hesitant. It's a tough job, and it's really a tough time to be taking over a superintendency. And I don't care if you're a small system or an urban system. We all have the same mandates, and this No Child Left Behind and our new curriculum standards that are in place. I think, you know, a lot of people are like, why do I want the headache? I'm really sounding gloom and doom, but you'll find someone that will want to take on the challenge. And I think your district, being that it is small, you don't have a lot of the issues that your big districts do and your big urban districts. I just won't even venture to say how many candidates you'll get.
Any more questions?
Don't want to give you any false hopes.
How many meetings do you see that we would have with each group, like the PTO, the principals, teachers? Do you just see one meeting with each, or? Okay.
And a sample schedule is on page 9 of your packet. That's just a sample of what I would just come in for a day and do these meetings, and then at night I do a community forum. That way anyone that didn't come during the day would have an opportunity to come that night at the community forum, so no one could say they didn't have an opportunity to participate.
Board members, are there any other questions that you would like to pose to Dr. Grissom? Do you recommend to us at this time a timeline for this search? If we took on TSBA and your expertise, what type of timeline do you think we would need, you would set for us?
The way I work is you tell me when you want someone to assume the position as director, and then I work backwards from there, is how we do it. And that's the timeline that's in your packet. You give me the date that you want the person to take the position, and then I would draft a timeline according to that and just work backwards. That timeline's on page 8. And it depends, too. If you want Plan 2, we need to schedule time to do the community meetings. If you don't want to do the community meetings, we can get down to business a lot sooner.
Have you seen that conducting the community meetings have been fruitful, or?
Very much so. And I think a lot of systems will say, well, we didn't get a lot of attendance. I mean, I've done community forums with 250 people, and I've done them when one person showed up. But the fact of it is, I think it's good for the board, so you all can say, We involved everyone. Everyone had an opportunity to participate in the process, and I just think it's good for the board to take that time. And it's really no time from the school board. It's me taking the time, but reporting back to you. And I think it's very fruitful for a school system. And then in the report, you do get to read the report of what people, some things people say may not be accurate, but at least you get a feel of what the community, and I can tell after the second meeting if it's a system where good things are going on, or I can tell you real quickly what the problems are. And I think that's good for a school board to see how these different groups feel, because whether you like it or not, perception is reality a lot of times. And so it's good for the board to see how the community and the faculty and staff, how they're feeling.
I heard you say about making the flyers that we would pass out.
Mm-hmm.
The question, what type of media do you use in your search? Do you have like a running cost of some of the ads is that part of the
No,
plan?
we just pay for ads in the national. Our brochure we'll post on our website. We mail it, fax it, depending on which entities. A lot of entities will say, don't mail it. We want you to email us the information. So we email and we mail to all the superintendents in the state. Then we email it to the TOSS organization, which is the superintendents organizations. There's principal associations. We email it to those. State Department, we email to those. All the state associations in the southern region, this is Plan 2, we'll email to those. Some of them like them faxed. But probably the most widely used thing is our website. Everybody visits our website. I had a call today. I was on your website. Do you have any searches on, going on? The internet and the website's been a good thing.
Mr. Hopper.
This is the last one. This may sound the latest, but some of us think we've had one of the premier systems in the state and would like to keep that. And I guess my question to you is, are there highly qualified and experienced candidates out there from that may or may not move, but do we have people from whom to choose or which to choose?
There are definitely highly qualified candidates out there that would make a good superintendent. Getting them sometime, I'm finding that I had one candidate that just pulled out on me at the last minute, and it was back to family, which I would have hoped he would have talked with his family before he committed to being one of the finalists. And there may have been something else going on with that. But it really is going to depend on the situation of the candidate. If they're single, it's usually not a problem. But when you get into the family and the issue we talked about earlier about moving and trying to find a job for the spouse, that is becoming an issue.
Well, it looks like we've exhausted our questions for you, but is there anything you would like to tell or make closing comments to this board?
Well, I wish you well, and whatever the board does decide, we are there to assist you, and I've offered what we would do for you, and any questions you have about the process, whatever you choose to do, decide on your process, vote on it, and stick with it. Don't get in the middle of the process and decide, we're going to interview everybody that applies, and you've told the search firm you want them to screen and provide, finalists. At least go through the process. Interview the 5 that the search firm provides to you, or whatever the number is. If you see that none of those candidates meet your criteria, your needs, then as a board come back and decide what you want to do next. But decide on your process first and stick with it, and I think you'll find your job as school board members and your life will be a lot easier if you let the community and everyone know up front, here's the process we're going to use, and stick with it. Okay.
Well, certainly I would like to thank you for the
Thank
time
you.
that you've taken from your schedule to
Anytime.
come explained this to us. It's been most helpful.
Good.
It's going to help us make a very tough decision. But thank you for all
You're
your help,
welcome.
Dr. Grissom, and
Good luck.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, board members, we've had a chance to hear from Tennessee School Board. Do you all have any questions or anything that, as a board, that you would like to just throw out and talk about? If not, we may be able to take a break at this time and get ready for our next firm to come in at 5:30. What is the consensus of the board? What would you like to do?
Is it 5:30 or 6?
I think it's 6.
Oh, 6 o'clock.
Are they here? Do we know if that person, if they're here? I don't think so.
I think it's 6.
6 o'clock? You're right, we have 6 o'clock. Did you want to check, Ms. Harris, and see if they're here?
Maybe if somebody has a phone number contact for either one of those groups, we could get in touch with them and tell them it's moving along more rapidly, possibly. Okay.
When are we going to get into the process of determining, I guess, I don't know whether I want to say qualifications or certifications, but that along with whether or not we're going to need to appoint an interim in the process?
Your 19th board meeting, we will most likely entertain, no, I'm going to answer that in two parts.
All right.
On the 19th, we'll probably entertain, because tonight we're going to make a decision. Once that decision is made, then we'll know exactly who we're going with and what their timeline is going to be. At that time, they will get with us and determine when our next meeting will be to sit down and set the criteria, talk with us and find out really what this board is looking at in a director. And on the 19th, we'll be able to look at that time and tell that we're probably going to need to look into an interim possibly, because I can't see us within the time that's going to be allotted. This is August. Ms. Mathis will retire in October. I don't see it. So realistically, we know as a board we're going to have to entertain that. Now, it would really be good if every board member could give a day and be the superintendent, but I know we can't do that, and I wouldn't even think it, but out of fun, I thought that would be an excellent thing to do. So we get a chance, just in case, to see what it's like in the day of a superintendent. But no, we will do that on the 19th because we need to be moving in that direction to get someone in place for that.
I don't think the system could afford to have me as director of schools for one day. Who knows what might happen on that day?
You know, that's a thought. I'm pretty sure Ms. Baker would want to talk to us at the next board meeting on why we should not put our name in the hat for the job.
Even
Our
for a
job
day.
as school board members.
Not for a day.
Ms. Duggan.
Since our last meeting, I've been doing quite a bit of researching and speaking to people, and I've just typed up some purely suggestions, just a draft, because I know in speaking with other school districts that have done a search lately, they have spent numerous board meetings, some of them as many as 5 or 6 board meetings just discussing the criteria. So I have gleaned from some of the things they've done and just put some things down on paper that might help us start thinking a little more pointedly, kind of jumpstart that process. And I have copies if at some point I could just pass those out. But strictly, this is just a draft just to get us to start thinking in that direction.
All righty. Do you have enough where Ms. Baker can?
I do.
All righty. That's, and I'm almost certain there are some more board members that you've had some ideas. And that is, thank you so much. Thank you. I know everybody's not sleeping. Some are working while the rest of us are sleeping. Mrs. Baker, is there anything that you need to tell us tonight? Or?
No, they're calling the other 2 companies to see if they may already be in town.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wade, should we go ahead and start supper, so if they do get here early, we could start early with the second group?
That sounds good to me. And I'm going to take an executive stance on that and not ask. But we're going to go ahead and, if they come a little early, that way we can get started. But let's go ahead as a board and take a small recess until we get back with one of the other groups. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the next session of our Murfreesboro City Board of Education special call meeting. We will now give Dr. Art Jones, Senior Associate, a chance to tell us a little bit about their organization. Dr. Jones.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wade. Several people had asked how I got here tonight. I live outside of Charleston, South Carolina now, and so we flew through Charlotte to Nashville. But I would have been here sooner, but MapQuest did not anticipate rush hour in terms of the amount of time it was going to take me to get from there to here. We're very happy to have the opportunity to present to you. Hazard Young Atiyah Associates is a firm that's been in business since 1987. Those who were the founding partners and those of us that have been involved for a number of years really became involved out of a passion for continuing to have a role in education, and particularly out of a desire to influence the quality of leadership in school districts around the country. So that's why we do what we do. And tonight I will very briefly talk about our firm, the process, a little bit about myself, a little bit about others who would be working with us if our firm were selected, and then provide plenty of opportunity for all of you to dig deeper and drill down if you have questions that aren't answered in my presentation. If selected, I would manage and lead the search. I would be the contact person with the board from Hazard Young Atiyah. And again, if selected, at one of the points early in the process, you would identify a liaison who would represent your interest in the search, so that the two of us would have the opportunity for ongoing communication and the exchange of information to the balance of the board. I hoped, but it was not possible with the late arrangement that we made, that my associate would be here this evening. But I'll tell you a little bit about Diana McCauley. Diana's resume is in the packet of materials that I presented to you. Diana and I have worked together in several different searches. Most recently, she assisted me in Athens, Georgia, and the superintendent search there that was concluded, I believe, in February or March of this year. She also assisted me in Tupelo, Mississippi, and that was a search that was completed in December of 2008. Diana works around the country. Her background and mine, we think, are very complementary. Her entire educational experience has been higher ed. She has been a professor. She's been a dean. She's been involved in leading programs. She's been an assistant to the president of a couple different colleges, and is now in the private sector as a sales associate for a national firm that has a computerized math program that they're selling around the country. The name of that is I Can Learn Education Systems. And the reason she's not here tonight, she is training teachers in the Columbia, South Carolina metro area in how to use that particular program in the districts where it's been adopted. Also, we would be assisted of counsel by Dr. Bill Atiyah. Bill is one of the founding partners. He's now our owner. Bill and I have known each other for over 40 years. We both retired the same year. He spent his retirement after retiring from education developing the firm, and I spent mine in another career, which I'll talk a little bit about, but not much. Bill has extensive experience in Tennessee. He managed the search in Metro Nashville. He also conducted 2 consecutive searches in Hamilton County. He conducted a CFO search in Memphis, and also a superintendent search in Knoxville. So Bill will be invaluable to us from a number of perspectives. I doubt if there is a gentleman in the country in our field who knows more people and who has personally been involved in more searches than Dr. Attia. So we've had conversation. I was slated to assist him in Nashville, and actually attended the planning meeting with the board. But at the time, I was involved in Mountain Brook, Alabama, and Athens, Georgia, and managing those, and the calendars didn't work. So I didn't benefit from that experience, but we're going to benefit if we're selected by Dr. Attia's experience. A little bit about who I am and why I'm doing what I am doing now. As Mrs. Wade indicates, I'm a senior associate with the firm. I'm vice chairman of the board of directors of the firm and have been involved with Dr. Attia and Charles Young and Bill Hazard when they were active since 1992. So I've stayed involved with that process over these years. I grew up in West Virginia, but ended up in the Chicago area when I pursued my doctorate at Loyola of Chicago. We're anticipating that we would come back east, and I ended up spending 38 years in the Chicago area. 22 of those years, I was a superintendent, an elementary school district superintendent, in 3 suburban communities. If you're familiar with Chicago, the communities that I served were Forest Park, Glen Ellen, and Lake Forest. After 30 years in education, I was offered an opportunity that I had never anticipated. I had been doing some private sector consulting, and particularly with, at this point, with an independently owned bank in the Chicago area. And I was persuaded to retire, which I did in 1994, and joined the bank as their executive vice president and chief operating officer. So for the last 12 years of my active full-time working life, I managed and ran a bank in an older community on the west side of Chicago. I retired the second time in 2006, and that's when we finally did get back to the east and relocated in the Charleston, South Carolina area. I get back to Chicago once a month as I've continued to be involved in the board of directors of the bank. And that also gives me access to our office, which is in Glenview, Illinois, if I need to be there on a personal basis. But as is true with your organization, we do almost everything now electronically. Our application process is electronic. I can remember the days, and those of you that maybe not too many of you, but those of you that might be closer to my age, might recall a time when we'd sit in a room with a stack of files across a table and read them individually and decide who we might think would be the appropriate person to hire. Well, we don't have to do that anymore. As soon as a completed application hits our website, we have the opportunity to screen it. We have an opportunity to begin to consider the qualifications of that person. The other thing that I would share with you is that I try not to do too many searches. I have completed the 3 that I was involved in over the 2008-2009 period of time. If there would be interest, in the last 2.5 to 3 years, I also did elementary superintendent searches in 3 different Chicago suburbs. Actually, 2 of the districts that asked me to come back were districts where I had previously served as superintendent, Forest Park and Glen Ellen, and the 3rd was Lamont. And I'd be happy to give you names of the board presidents at the time or the liaisons if you'd like to actually find out how I and our firm interacted specifically with an elementary school district in the search process. The other thing that I would offer is, in talking with Dr. Attia, he has said that if you have interest, he would be very comfortable, and our firm would be very comfortable, if you were to contact David Fox, who is the board president in Nashville, Connie Smith with the Department of Education, and Mary Johnston, who was the Metro legal counsel assigned to the Board of Education during that search. And just once again, I was not involved other than sitting on the planning meeting, but that was very instructive in that I continued to stay in the loop as far as all the correspondence and all the information that was transpiring at the time. About us, as I said, we've been in the business for now going on 22 years. We don't do all kinds of searches. Our specialty is school executive searches. It's a serious and sustained commitment, as I referenced earlier. And the bulk of the people, not all, but the bulk of the people involved are either retired school superintendents or directors, or active superintendents or directors, higher education personnel, either professors or administrators, and actually board members who might have been involved in the process when we were working with them to help them find a superintendent or director, and felt that it's something they'd like to do. So we have 110 associates around the country. We cast a net that goes from coast to coast. We have specific active associates in 24 states and in every region of the country. So when we undertake a search, in addition to the traditional channels, if you will, that might be tapped and might be explored, we have an immediate access to people who have been successful in the field, have been active in the field, and continue to stay engaged and involved in the educational process. The process itself. In the packet that I gave you, I think it's second in order, is a flow chart. And I want to talk a little bit about this just to highlight some points of the flow chart. But then, as I said, give you an opportunity to ask more of me. If you look at this initially, everything on the left side of the vertical line is the board's responsibility. And everything on the right side of that line is our responsibility. And it's responsibility that we would fulfill in partnership with the board. We feel very strongly that we act at the direction of the board and we work for the board. Although we have recommended processes and steps, they are alterable, they are adaptable, and at a point which I will reflect upon in a moment, you would have the opportunity to give us that direction as to the specifics of what you would hope we could do in reshaping this outline so that it fits your school system. After the selection of the consultant, if we were to be selected, we would seek a meeting with you as soon as that might be possible, a planning meeting. And at that planning meeting, I'll reference two other handouts. I won't talk about them in detail, but one is a draft agenda for a search planning meeting. And we would want that to occur soon, because at that meeting, if you look at the second, you'll see a director search calendar with none of the dates filled in, but the various responsibilities. At that planning meeting, the two really critical things would be to develop the calendar for the search. And we begin with when you want to end. We begin when you want to appoint a new director and work back through this process. And I would come, and hopefully Diana would be available to a planning meeting with some proposed dates in mind to allow everything to happen in a sequential and logical way, but ask that all of you bring your calendars, because it's real important to you and it is to us that the full board is involved at every step along the way. I know you feel this is if not one of the most important job you have, and we feel that way too. And so we would want to be sure that all of our calendars mesh, and we may go out months, but so that everyone has their dates in place, and they work around and plan around those dates. The other thing that would happen at that meeting, if you just look down at the agenda item 3, and we would ask you in advance to think about groups and or individuals within the school community and the extended stakeholder community who you would like to have engaged in focus group conversation with us. Part of our proposal is built in 4 consulting days, and that's 2 days with 2 people here. And over the course of those 2 days, we typically begin at 8 o'clock in the morning. We also, I don't want to overlook this, we would, before we scheduled other groups, want to schedule an individual at least 1 hour in length conference with each of you to get your perspective on what you believe the board might be needing, wanting, looking for in a new leader. We start at 8. We on 1 hour increments. We sometimes take a lunch. It depends on the number. But we can get, between the 2 of us, 36 groups in over a 2-day period, plus community meetings in the evening. And again, you would determine how many, whether we have 1 or 2, and that would all be part of the conversation as we schedule. The other thing that we would talk about at that meeting, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with this, but we would ask you in advance to take a look at the leadership profile report, or form, excuse me, the leadership assessment form. And typically we asked those who we interact with to define what they see as the qualities and the strengths of the district that they feel have to be preserved. Those are characteristics of this district or community that you feel are so strongly supported that they have to be endured, regardless of what they must be continued regardless of what might occur. We then ask those involved to talk with us about some of the challenges and or issues or opportunities that a new director would have to face in the first year or the first 3 to 5 years, so that we have a feeling for what is perceived as the matters that are going to need attention, if not immediate, over the early tenure of your new director. We then ask for individuals to identify for us the characteristics or the attributes that they feel are important for the person who might be selected to be successful in this community. You also will see on the back side a list of 10 characteristics. We ask, and those are changeable. There may be things you would want to know that this doesn't bring out for you. But we ask that those be rated, or ranked 1 through 10. That doesn't mean that 1 is more important than 10 necessarily, because they're all important. But in terms of what that group or that individual sees, this is what they see. Then part of our leadership profile report, and we need about 2 weeks to turn it around. It ends up being a 20 to 25-page report, and it tells you what we've heard. It doesn't tell you what we think about what we've heard. It'll tell you what we've heard. What we've heard from all the various stakeholder groups. And the report will define consistent themes around strengths, for example, and other messages that we heard that may not have been consistent across all stakeholder groups, but it's something that the board should know. And we'll do that for each stakeholder group, whether it's Board of Education, administration, teachers, support staff, parents, business groups, elected officials. Although the elected officials, so they're not identified, will be consolidated with community, so that no one stands out. In other words, anything that we hear will not be reported in terms of the messenger, but the message that we heard. With that report, you also get 2 or 3 tables that will identify how the various stakeholder groups have ranked what they feel as being more important in terms of the characteristics that they're seeking in a new superintendent. And you'll be able to see similarities and contrast across stakeholder groups. The board will ultimately, however, adopt the report, and the board will ultimately establish the criteria for the search. The night that we come back and present the report, we will also present a draft of the characteristics sought in the next director of schools for your system. Those are things that we will work out together, but we'll give you something to work from based upon what we've heard. The other thing that we will recommend, or would recommend, is that this form have as wide a distribution as possible, that you put it on your website, that you put it in backpacks, that you ask your newspaper to publish it, that you use any means possible, because not everyone's going to be included in a group that you will invite for a focus group, and not everyone can come to a meeting, whether it's a daytime or nighttime meeting. But you want all to have an opportunity. And we think this is the most important phase of the search, because you get a front-loaded perspective on what various stakeholders in your community believe or perceive to be the situation in your school district. And that can guide and direct not only us, but you as you think about who you might hire going forward. So these 3 documents, and again, I won't go into any detail further, but if you have questions about anything that I've said about that, I'd be happy to answer. If we go back to the flow chart for a moment, after the board approves and receives the report and approves the criteria, we then know who we're looking for. We then know the kind of person, the background, the experiences, the educational background, as well as the educational experiences that they've had, meaning work experiences that they've had, their personal characteristics. Since I've moved to the Southeast, I have concentrated my work in the Southeast. And there's no question in my mind that there are regional differences, absolutely regional differences. And we talk about being a national firm and having a national network. But in reality, the focus will most likely be on the Southeast region. One, people aren't as mobile as they once were for a lot of different reasons, which I won't go into at this point. The other is that there are regional differences in terms of culture and attitude and approach and manner. And in the searches that we have, that I've recently completed in Athens and Tupelo and Mountain Brook, the persons selected have been within, if not within the state, within the region. Most of the slated candidates that we've presented have been within the region, unless there's an outrider who really does fit and could adapt to a move from the Midwest to the Southeast, for example. We don't often see people moving from California to New York and vice versa, but some Midwest, Southeast, Southwest interaction does occur. We don't do brochures. And the reason we don't is that they're much too expensive, we think, with the electronics that we have, and they really don't help you in terms of telling your story. So that reduces the cost, and it also gives us an opportunity to reach out further. We will reach out to all the state associations in the region. I learned, though, early on that there's some states that won't take our announcement of vacancy because they're concerned about coming in and robbing from Georgia, for example. And if I recall directly, Georgia is one of the states, when I was working in Mississippi, that didn't want our announcement of vacancy, didn't want our criteria statement because they didn't want us mining Georgia. Well, we mine Georgia, but not with their assistance. We also, several years ago, did a pro bono search for the American Association of School Administrators for their new executive director. And our purpose wasn't completely altruistic. One, we all had been members of the American Association of School Administrators, but it also gave our firm an opportunity to meet executive directors of state school administrator groups all over the country. And that just developed another network. One of the colleagues that actually assisted me in Mountain Brook, Alabama, is the executive director of South Carolina SACS, Southern Accreditation Group. I know they have a different name now, but I haven't discovered what it is. But I haven't learned what it is or remember what it is. But from that network, we also have access to people who are doing doing visits and assessments and evaluations around the Southeast area as well. We would do the initial screening and vetting, all the resume checking. We would bring you the number of candidates that we would agree upon in a planning session that you want. We talk about the number. Your state has there's some unique aspects to working in your state, which you're very familiar with in terms of the open records and open meetings. We're very sensitive to that. And if selected, we would immediately want to work with Mrs. Baker and make sure that we don't stub our toes and we don't do anything that would be harmful to the board of the district from a legal perspective. So that would be part of our preparation as well. We would then bring X number to you, and the night that we bring them, we would conduct an interview workshop. But prior to that time, we would have asked you to do some homework. And we would have asked you to identify, each of you, to identify 2 or 3 questions that you would like to ask of each of the candidates. We will take your input and create an interview script. And why do we do that? Well, one, you then have a baseline for comparing the candidates that you see that in the initial interview is common to all 3. It also keeps you focused on the issues that are important to you or the issues that surfaced during the leadership profile report. And we'll conduct a workshop that night before presenting the slate to you. After that, we'd help you set up the interviews. I or Diana and I, but I would definitely come in after you've completed your first round of interviews and sit with you. Not to be the 8th board member, because that's not our role. But we would ask that you enforce a discipline upon yourself, and that is that you do not talk about any of the candidates until you have seen all of them and you're all together for the first time, so that you don't begin to formulate a perspective on a candidate before you've seen all the candidates. And then I'll come in and basically sit down and facilitate your hearing each other and listening to each other, and in a process that would help you to determine the finalists that you would like to take a closer look at on a second round of interviews. We will come back after that and sit with you and help you with that decision. We'll do as much appositional work with you, side-by-side work, as you want, and that's all built into our proposal. Up to and including assisting as let's say an intermediary, if you will, with contract discussion and negotiations, but always keeping the attorney involved as well. One thing that I will mention that we used to put in as an option, but we no longer do, and it was after some discussion at our board. We used to say it's not a part of the proposal, but we would recommend that you, in addition to our reference checking and that you might do when you have the candidates, is that you engage a private investigative firm to do a complete background check, criminal, civil, and financial, newspaper check, And we have a firm that works exclusively with us called Baker Eubanks. They're very reasonable, and we now include that as a part of the process. We don't want, nor do we want a board with whom we work, to ever be asked the question, did you do a thorough background check on this individual, and have us or you say no. So that is now a very critical point. We don't do it on all the candidates. Among other reasons, they have to authorize it. And so we get down to the finalist and where you think you know where you're going, and then we would implement that process before a site visit might occur. I'm going to stop at this point, and I'll say one final thing and then answer any questions that you have. And that is that I suspect that all the firms with whom you meet are going to have a similar process that they're going to implement. And the difference is going to boil down to the people involved, the fit in terms of how you feel the firm fits with your expectations and your interest, and the networks that they have developed and the relationships. And it's all going to boil down to people. And we are aware of that. We're here because we'd like to have your business. We're here because we've done our homework to a degree. We still have a lot to learn, but we know this is a wonderful school system. I'm intrigued, frankly. I won't take your time for me to learn, but I'm intrigued by the concept that you have a K-6 district. We have K-8 districts in the Chicago area because of the dual organization, but that's really unique, and that's wonderful, because that's, as you all know, that's really where the rubber hits the road in terms of what you can do for children.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones, for informing us quite a bit. We'd like to ask you, I will ask you a few questions. If I happen to ask a question and it's got 2 or 3 parts to it, feel free to ask me to go back.
Okay.
Please talk about your experience with placing candidates in urban systems as opposed to other kinds of communities.
Okay. My experience or the firm's experience?
You can talk with both if you like.
The firm has had considerable experience. Our firm has been involved in districts from 300 to 300,000. I have not been involved in large district searches. Nashville would have been the largest search that I would have been involved in had I been able to stay in it. In terms of the question, though, in terms of experience with urban-like systems, Athens is clearly 2 communities. You have the university, which is surrounded by a professional aura and a highly educated population. And then you have another part of Athens that if you look at it in terms of a continuum, that literally is from one point of a continuum of highly educated and highly professional and very committed with high expectations to very low expectations with very significant needs, with challenges that are unique to gaps that occur in achievement when you have such broad discrepancies in your school population. So our challenge was to find a slate that would represent a person who could identify with the university environment and be able to walk into some of the poorest. In fact, the county, Clark County, is one of the poorest counties, if not the poorest county in the state of Georgia. Walk into those communities and understand and have affect and be able to relate to communities that don't feel that they are as well served, or that they're underserved, or that they don't have the same opportunities. Tupelo is another example I would use, but in a different way. Tupelo was a community in the 1970s that decided that their public schools were going to be the school of choice for every child in the community. And when I worked with them last school year, they were 55% minority, but continued to be committed to how can we do our work better so that we don't begin to see, candidly, flight from the public system. And to the extent that their Community Development Foundation actually came in and funded a bonus system for the new superintendent, because in Mississippi the law didn't allow public funds to be used for incentive compensation. They also worked with us in terms of telling the Tupelo story. Perhaps like all of you, I didn't know anything about Tupelo other than that Elvis Presley was born there. But there's a lot of urban characteristics there. But I'll stop with that. I haven't been involved in large districts. It hasn't really been my interest. And as a superintendent, I was involved in smaller elementary school districts.
Thank you. Who are the individuals that would actively conduct the search for your firm? Is this their full-time job?
Okay. This is my full-time job, even though it's a part-time job, and I would be the person who would manage and lead the search. Diana McCauley would assist me, and she would be involved in the focus groups. She would be involved in presenting and preparing the report, and would likely be involved with me in screening and initial interviewing of candidates. Dr. Attia would be involved of counsel, which would mean that he would be available to us. Whether he would be on site is another question because of his commitments around the country. But he would definitely be a part of our team. Those are the three names I would offer to you who would be involved, and I just should stop there. We will use other associates, but those are the three people that would primarily be involved.
Thank you. How many times would you plan to be in the district, and how long of a stay will each time be for your visits?
Okay. The planning meeting, I would probably be in for a day, depending upon the meeting, or the time of the meeting, excuse me. For the focus groups, we'd probably be here 3 days. 2 days actively working, and another day, if we needed it, to do some follow-up work. We would then come back for the meeting where your leadership profile report would be presented, so that would be an additional day. We would then come back to present your slate and conduct the interview workshop, which would be another day, and then come back after each phase of your interviewing process. So 6 to 7 days total. But because this, I began to say earlier that I don't do many searches. This is the only search I would be involved in at this point in time. I haven't committed to any other searches. So my time, my wife would say it's full-time, but I perceive it as part-time.
What is your retention rate for directors that you have placed?
That's a statistic. We have completed 80 to 90% of the people that have been slated through our firm, across all the searches that we've done, are still in the district or have retired from the district. So we really look for a long-term commitment. We don't believe that anything happens overnight. We just don't believe that it does.
Okay.
And for that reason, we also would recommend a longer-term contract. And our understanding is that initial contract. My understanding is that you can offer up to 4 years. I'm not suggesting that you do that, but you certainly would want a multiple-year contract, because the first year, unless you hire an internal candidate that's very familiar, is going to be an adjustment year, quite candidly. And real change will begin after that person has earned the trust and confidence of the people with whom he or she would work.
If expenses will be charged in addition to your firm's fee, please provide an estimate of expenses incurred in similar searches.
Certainly. We're estimating that the reimbursement of the consultant's expenses would be around $4,500. It's hard to estimate what it would be for bringing candidates in, because we don't know where they're going to come from. What Dr. McCauley and I have been able to do in some instances is save the district money, because she lives in Columbia and I live in Charleston, is we actually bring people to us rather than two of us flying someplace and have people fly in to meet us there. So we really reduce the expenses. And we have access to club facilities for interviewing that is of no charge to the board as well. So I would say in Athens, it was for the candidates. They had candidates coming in from across the country, although they hired a gentleman from South Cobb County, 3,500 to 4,000. And it's just a guesstimate. We could give you a better idea when we knew the slate.
Will you negotiate your fee?
Our fee is established based upon the experience that we have in terms of what it takes when we're not here with you to get the job done the way you would want to get it done. So our fee that is presented, I believe, is $19,500. That would be adjustable if we were to take steps out of the process. But it's essentially, we set our fees based upon the size of the community and the kind of work that we think we would need to do to do a good job for you. So I guess the direct answer is yes, we would, but it would involve our looking at the process together and determining where you would like us to cut corners. And we could do that, and we have done that. We've gone in both directions. So yes, can we change what it would cost you? We would want to talk about what we might be able to do to reduce some of our commitment, not our commitment, our time.
I'm going to stop right here and ask, before we go into any more questions, were there anything that already Dr. Jones has answered that you wanted to maybe go back and ask while we're here in this area?
What was the amount on the consultant fee? Was it
$19,500.
No, not the firm fee. The
Expenses.
expenses for the
Oh, the expenses for the consultants, $4,500 is an estimate.
and that's per consultant. So
No,
that would
that's
be
total.
for all three of you.
Well, Dr. Atiyah doesn't.
Oh, he doesn't count. Okay.
He doesn't count.
Okay. So two
Yes.
consultants.
The two of us, yes. And it could be less than that, Dr. Buttram, because it really depends on how much we have to travel.
Anyone else have a question before we go on? Ms. Duggan?
Would you clarify a little bit more about what you meant when you said that you bring people to you versus you going to them?
Yes. We feel, we look at this in terms of three tiers of candidates. The first tier, which we feel is the tier that you would want us to focus upon, are people that are successful where they are, don't have a reason to leave where they are, and aren't looking for an opportunity to go someplace else. And those are people who have proven track records that we need to address and approach in terms of the opportunity that they would have if we were to leave. Another Tier 1 candidate also might be a deputy superintendent or an assistant superintendent that we know about through and who are nominated through our associate network that we would consider. Tier 2 are really individuals that don't have the background and experience but want to be superintendents. And Tier 3 are people who have been superintendents and may not be at the moment, may not be employed, but they're looking for employment. So, Mrs. Duggan, when I say we go after them, 60 to 80%, and we've tracked that as well, of the people we slate are people we've recruited. And I'm not going to say that some haven't surfaced from the general application process, because they have. But the bulk of people are those that we have sought out.
Are there any more questions? I did have one, Dr. Jones, that I want to make sure I heard you right. A part of your active base of folks working, did you say you had active directors, board members on staff or working with you all?
No,
Did I miss that?
on our staff, in terms of our office staff, we have 2.5 support staff, and we have a CEO on our staff. In terms of associates, we have 110 associates, and they're all part-time. They all either are doing something else or are retired,
Okay.
and doing this primarily out of an interest in staying involved with education.
If a vacancy occurs during the first 2 to 3 year period following the employment of a candidate recommended, will your firm go through the process of recommending other candidates with no additional charge to Murfreesboro City Schools?
Let me make sure I understood the question correctly. If we were, the guarantee we offer is that if in the first year of employment the person either resigns or is dismissed, that we will come back and complete a search without additional charge. We also guarantee that we will not accept an application from or recruit the person you hire for a minimum of 5 years. The only way we would even talk to a person that you might hire is if they've already come to you and said to you, will you authorize our applying for a position? I think there was another element to your question, though, that I may have missed, and if you could just restate that, I'd appreciate it.
If a vacancy occurs during the first 2 to 3 year period following the employment of a candidate recommended, will your firm go through the process of recommending other candidates with no additional charge to the system?
No.
So you said 1 year,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah, he
Yes.
said.
That's. Thank you for repeating the question.
Okay. On this question, it has a few sections to it, so how do you define recruit candidates in your comment to recruit qualified applicants as used in your proposal? Do you actively seek highly qualified candidates from other systems? If yes, in the same state or not?
Yes, we do. And as a private firm in the search business, we don't have a conflict of interest or an ethical breach that we have to worry about to go into any district and talk to their superintendent or their director about a job that we think is a good fit based upon the profile that's been developed and the situation that you offer. We'll go wherever the candidate is and have the ability to, because of the breadth of, not only the breadth of and the range of people involved, but the breadth of experience. I don't have anyone in mind for this job because I don't know what you want in the person that you hire. When we know that, we will begin the outreach and definitely talk to people who are not looking for a job. I was never hired by a Board of Education that hired me in between jobs. They hired me from a job to another job.
How do you weight, WEIGHT, questions in importance to the skills and qualifications of an applicant?
Well, we weight it in terms of whether the skills and qualifications are consistent with what you've said you want. And if you establish some priorities in terms of what you want, that's the weight that we assign.
Okay. Your job is to find quality candidates for Director of Schools for Murfreesboro City Schools District. If there's a person that we would like to interview and is not on your preferred list, can we interview that person?
Well, of course you can. But let me go back to something that I didn't say. In every group with whom we would have interaction during the profile development, we would ask if there is an individual who they would nominate, who they think, either because they lived in the district or worked in the district and they knew something about them, that they would nominate for consideration. And we make a commitment to everyone, and we would make the same commitment to you, that we would explore their background and determine whether they fit the criteria that you've established. We won't make a guarantee that we would present them on the slate, but it is your search. And if you would determine that there is someone that you would like to interview, the only thing that we would counsel is that you interview them in the same framework and format with the same structure that you would interview any other candidates, so that they're all being fairly judged and evaluated. The other thing that I would say to you is that if you have internal candidates, and that's on the agenda that we would talk about, but I think it's related, it could be related to your question, we will assure that every internal candidate would have a thorough screening interview and interaction with us. It would be up to you to say to us that you want to see every internal candidate, or you want us to screen and recommend whether those internal candidates might be someone that you should consider as a part of your final slate. As I understand your open records and open meeting laws, to the degree that I do, is that one of the factors is that there are people who aren't looking for a job, that aren't necessarily going to expose themselves if they are among a cast of a larger audience, or a larger group, if you will, because they're putting their the trust and the loyalty, the commitment that others have made in them and their home districts, for example, at jeopardy. So we would want to talk about how we would get you and the best possible candidates together in compliance with law, but in a way that they would not be discouraged from even considering coming here. And we've worked with other states that have very similar laws. So when I talk about Dr. Atiyah being of counsel, it'll be very helpful to you and to us in that regard.
What does your firm do to help assure that the candidate that the board picks will be successful?
We sweat a lot. We take our work very seriously, and we don't want to be embarrassed, and we don't want you to be embarrassed. And we really we value our reputation, so we'll do everything possible to bring you people who can be successful in your system. But we worry about it, because we get as invested in the process as you are. We don't live here after the process is over, but we certainly take seriously what we're doing while we're partnering with you.
How do you value input from the stakeholders? Not about how the input is gained. Talk about how you incorporate the different and or competing elements of that input into manageable criteria vision.
Well, we do it basically by analyzing what we've heard and putting it in a form in our profile report that you hear it, and then we relate what we've heard to the criteria that we've heard, and we will have heard what people are thinking and wanting, if you will, and perceiving across as wide a spectrum as you help us develop in terms of identifying the groups. So everything flows from the forums and the individual interviews right into the criteria. So there isn't a stopgap in between. It's one process leads to the other, and is built on the other. It's like you have to have a mission. I'm going to put it in that context, in the planning context. Your mission defines your purposes. Your vision defines your aspirations. You have to have a good statement of purpose before you can begin to envision your future. And until you've thought about your future, you can't implement a plan that will take you over the next 3 to 5 years in addressing what are valid and important elements of your organization's needs. So in the same way a mission, vision, core values, and plan flow, the process begins. That's why we said that the most important part is that community interaction and stakeholder interaction. You may not be surprised by what you hear, but you'll only hear what we have heard, not what we think we've heard.
Did the board members have any questions they'd like to ask?
I got a couple.
All right, Mr. Campbell.
Dr. Jones, where are your associates, or do you have any associates in the state of Tennessee?
Yes. Actually, he's not an associate currently, but Jesse Register assisted me in Mountain Brook. And it was the first year after he had retired as superintendent in Hamilton County. So he is currently, as you know, superintendent in Nashville, so he is not an associate of ours. But Jesse is a person I've worked with, and whenever I have an interest in a candidate from Tennessee, that's who I call.
Now,
that's the only one I can name, sir. There may be others, but it's the only one I can name.
as far as the candidate list, am I right when I state that if your firm conducts a search and people apply with your firm, then that is not necessarily public knowledge list? Am I right?
I don't think so. I would defer to the attorney, but I believe that if we have a formal application, that it's part of the records that have to be provided to the public. And more exactly, in Nashville, the newspaper put a request in before the process began, and our firm responded and provided them with the criteria that fit the law, and we provided information that we had. We have to, and that's part of what I said earlier. We're not going to step outside of the boundaries of your law because it's not in your interest, and it's not in our interest.
I wouldn't want you to.
Are there any other questions on this side?
I do have a question. And you may have partly answered this, but if we were to, have somebody that came forward that was just so outstanding that we wanted to just hire that person, and we had already signed a contract, would there be a way to prorate that? If you hadn't done all the work yet, would we have to pay for all of that work?
No, if we have,
Okay.
if there's someone that surfaces early on and it's clear, no, we can we can adapt and adjust.
Only we would be so lucky, right?
Yes.
So.
The time frame that you're working with is going to be difficult, and I'm going to be frank and honest about that. Around the country, and it's true in the Southeast, most directors or superintendents' contracts are July 1 to June 30. Most are. So many of the people you may want to hire are getting ready to start their school year and are committed. And now, I'm not suggesting they wouldn't leave, but it's going to be difficult to get someone to step away midstream. And contractually, they may not be able to. I don't mean to create anxiety, but that's a reality.
Mr. Campbell.
You have indicated that you've done some study of our city and our school system. Can you give us any kind of a ballpark figure, estimate, on a time frame?
Yes, and we'll adjust the time frame. But to do everything the way we would like to do it, and the way we would recommend would be 3 to 4 months. An expedited search, which we'd have to sit down and really think about how we would adjust the process, would be a 6-week search. But that's a different process when you're in the spring of the year preceding the school year than when you are right at the beginning of a new school year. So it's going to be a balancing act in that regard.
Dr. Andrews.
Do you all ever help with finding interim directors?
Yes, we do. We do. And that's a question that you will, well, I suspect you're going to have to face in any instance, in either instance, but yes, we do. And we have done that in a number of cases, and we would be, if that's the direction you'd want to go, and you'd want us to be involved, we'd certainly do that. And we would do that without, without any charge. We would assist you in that process. So it would be, it would be an additional service that we'd offer if you desire that to be the case. I also understand that your interim superintendent cannot be a candidate unless there's a vote of the board, and if I understood that correctly. And that's a good policy, I would say. It's a very good policy. Because that person that man or woman is maintenance, really. Don't upset the apple cart. They're not here to make dramatic change. They're here to keep things stabilized and on track until you hire the leader that you want to see. Was it Mrs. Matthews? Is it Dr. Matthews? Mathis, excuse me. Mathis. Is it Dr. Mathis?
Mrs. Mathis.
Mrs. Mathis. I think she was here 12 years in the role of director and a total of 26 years. You want someone, I think, that's going to make that kind of long-term commitment to you. Maybe not 26 years, but we ask people that we recruit to make a minimum of a 5-year commitment to the position, or don't apply. Because if you're not in for the long haul, it's not going to serve the community well. It's not going to serve the district, and particularly, it's not going to serve the children well. So we always ask that question. If we present you after we've done all of our vetting, will you commit to staying in the district up to a minimum of 5 years? And that's not negotiable for us.
Any more questions?
I have one more.
Okay, Dr. Andrews.
I think I'll ask everybody this. I mean, from what you know of our system, what do you see any particular challenges for us? Any particular advantages?
See, the advantages that you have is you're a high-performing school district. You are one of the best districts based upon what we've seen in the state. You have A and B grades. You exceed the state proficiency expectations and levels, I think in most, if not all. What you have is an attractive place for someone to come. What you have is a story to tell. What you have is a record of success. And what you have is a board who is not at odds with itself. And I say that after watching 2 hours and some minutes of your last 2 board meetings. You have different points of view, but you are respectful of each other, and you're not argumentative. And that, as a former superintendent, in the environment today, is worth money in the pocket for a person who's coming into a new district. So those are the things you have. Challenges I couldn't identify because I haven't really been here. I successfully maneuvered the rush hour traffic to get here, but that's the biggest challenge I've had all day.
I bet you're hungry.
You're probably when I'm working. I will be when I get in the car and leave, but not at the moment. I really all I would say is that if we're selected, you will find us to be a group of individuals that not only takes what we do seriously, but wants you to succeed in the process. Because if you succeed, we succeed. And I do this only because it keeps me alert intellectually, and it keeps me engaged in a profession. I didn't go to school to become a banker. I went to school to become a teacher. Frankly, I was hired as a banker because I didn't know anything about banking. By these 2 people who I will say had tremendous foresight and insight. But nevertheless, I'll leave it at that.
All bankers are like that, by the way.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. I knew that Mr. Hopper was a banker. Actually, the community bank that I work for and still serve on the board is owned by a non-banker who was the former GM of the Chicago Bears when they won the Super Bowl back in '85. So you probably don't remember that, but the non-banker, his name is Jerry Venisi, owns our bank. And it's because he was a non-banker that he looked at me and said, you're going to ask different questions. You're going to be a different banker. And I was. I learned an awful lot. But you do what you know. You do what you're familiar with. And so I worked in a bank as if I was running a school system.
It's a management job.
It is. Mm-hmm. People-centered management job. Mm-hmm. One of the first things I said to our when I was new, and to our young officers is, you're not in the financial service industry, you're in the people service industry.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Jones, is there anything that you would like to say to us in your closing? We certainly are appreciative of you being here, and certainly you have informed us on quite a few areas. But is there anything you would like to say at this time, or you'd like to reiterate on that maybe you didn't get enough time, you still got time, to say?
No, I'm very respectful of your time, and this has been a long day for you, and it's not over. I would just say that if we're selected, Dr. McCauley and I will give you the best that we have to offer, and we would look forward to having that opportunity.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome. And good luck.
Thank you.
Board members, are there any questions? You all have any questions maybe for him before he leaves or anything? Before we get, all righty. Thank you. Right here, if it's okay, we'll take a small little recess, give the board a break, okay, before our next interview.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I put my card on the desk.
Mhm.
I want to bankrupt them, so.
Good evening. Welcome back to the Murfreesboro City Board of Education Special Call Meeting. Now we're ready to hear from Dr. Thomas Jacobson with McPherson and Jacobson. Thank you for coming, sir. And
Thank you
now-
very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening to address you. Mrs. Dunn and I feel like we know you. We watched your August 3rd board meeting. We appreciate that very much. Got a chance to see how well you work as a Board of Education. We sent down to you a folder of information. In that folder is a bound presentation, which I'll be operating from tonight to highlight some of the things about our firm. Prior to doing that, you have an excellent website, and you have covered who you are and what you do, and we appreciate that. That gives us information ahead of time. But we'd like to introduce ourselves to you and then talk a little bit about our firm. And I'd like Mrs. Dunn to introduce herself first, please.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobson. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the invitation to come. I'm Loe, L-O-E, Dunn, D-U-N-N. I'm from Louisiana. I've been a consultant with McPherson and Jacobson for 6 years. I am an educator. I have been an educator for 29 years with the Louisiana Technical College System, where I serve as an administrator. I started that job in January. Up until then, I was a teacher for 29 years. I'm also a school board member. I've been a school board member for 19 years, served as past president several times, and it's good to see both perspectives of how things are done, and it teaches you better how things that you should not do. I also serve on various boards in our city. I serve also with the Region 8 Technical College System Screening and Employment Committee. I also serve as Economic Development Chair for Morehouse Parish. I take that back. I'm past president of the Economic Development Board for our parish. You know, we have parishes in Louisiana. And I also serve as compliance officer for the mayor in the city of Bastrop. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me and my abilities. Don't want to brag, but I do want to tell you how happy I am to be here. Thank you.
I told her she could brag, as Mr. Campbell said, that give us a half hour to brag on ourselves, and so that's what we're going to do that. In this proposal, I'm not going to go through everything that's in here. You've had a chance to read it, but I do want to highlight some of the things why we think we're the firm that you should hire. My name's Tom Jacobson. I'm the co-founder and owner of McPherson and Jacobson. My background includes being an elementary teacher, an elementary principal, high school principal, and a superintendent for 16 years in Minnesota and Colorado. 19 years ago, I chose to go to the University of Nebraska and become a professor of educational administration, a position which I still hold. And my area of expertise is human resource management. That's what I bring to that leadership development piece. And that's a very nice match for what this business does. I tell my students, when I first started out teaching, I heard the phrase, those that can do, and those that can't teach. I got real upset when I heard that. And now I can tell them, not only do I do it, I teach it, or I teach it and I do it as we do this. So I want to go through and talk about some of the things that we do. First, I want to tell you, we don't hire superintendents. That's not what we're about. What we do is we have a decision-making model that we take you as a Board of Education through, in which you are in complete control of this process. We do have expertise that we're going to bring to this process, and we're going to advise you through the process, but it's your process, and we want to make sure that it's your process as we do that. After every search, we send out evaluations to every board member that we've worked with. We have the collective wisdom of about 2,500 to 3,000 board members that have told us what works well and what needs to be changed, and we meet yearly to go through that information and constantly updating and changing our process as we do that. Excuse me. One of the things that I think distinguishes us from the other firms, that's the level of transparency we believe in. We believe that this should be a very transparent process. The public business should be done in public. And we've developed a method for you all to do that and still to be able to attract and recruit quality candidates. We're one of the top national firms, and a piece that we're very proud of. We have almost a 90% retention rate of people that we have placed for the past 5 years. We have a 2/3 retention rate for the past 10 years. And since we were founded in 1991, over 50% of our placements are still on the job. And we think there's some things that we do that make that happen, and I'll explain those as we go through this process. As was included in the proposal, our price is $11,500. That's for a national search, and that's for a year working with you after you have selected your new school director. And I'll talk about how we do that. And we think that's an important piece of that retention of superintendent, or excuse me. If I say superintendent, you have to excuse me. The state I come from, that's what they're called. I'll try to say school director if possible. We provide a guarantee with that. Our guarantee listed in here is 1 year. That's open. That's typically what we put in if you want a 2-year guarantee, or sometimes we have guaranteed the length of the first contract to be able to do the process. As you stated, as you debated the various firms that you talked about, someone stated, this is the most important decision you'll make. And it is. You make many important decisions, but the hiring of your new director is absolutely the most crucial decision you make as a Board of Education. And we can assist you in being very successful in doing that. I know that, as you talked about this, that money is an issue, and it is every place across the United States. Every place we go, that's an issue. But as I looked, this, even though it's the most important decision, our fee represents less than 0.02% of your overall budget. So keep that in perspective as you weigh those issues as you do that. If you'll turn to page 5. And again, I'm not going to read through all this. I'm just going to highlight some things that we picked up from your discussion to try and clarify how we operate. You start talking about selection criteria at your last, or the April 3rd meeting. We have a process that we take you through. It's a research-based process called nominal group technique. And what we will do, working with you as a board, is to help you focus on the top 5 or 6 areas that are really important that you want your new person to possess. I teach educational leadership. They've all had the classes. They've had public relations, they've had finance, they've had curriculum, they've had law, they've had all the classes. Some people do some of those things better than others. It's important for us to find out what's important to you, and that drives our recruitment piece, to find people that have those skill sets to bring in, to present to you as possible candidates. We'll work with you on setting your timelines, your calendar. And again, that's going to be your choice as how you do that. It typically goes 2 to 3 months. We can extend that if you wish. We can speed it up. This time of the year, there's probably no advantage to speeding it up. In the fall of the year, sometime, or in the spring of the year, sometimes there are. But again, we'll advise you as we go through that process. And we'll talk about how we advertise and attract candidates. Phase 2 on page 6. We involve your stakeholder groups in 2 ways. The first way we do that is we come in and spend whatever time necessary to meet with the stakeholder groups you've identified for us. Those are typically teachers, students, principals, support staff, community groups, whatever you've decided. And what we do is we have an open forum, and we ask those groups 3 questions. Question number 1, tell us the good things about your school district and community. The importance of that question is to help us as recruiters. This is a 2-way decision-making process, and we have to be able to brag on you as to why people should apply here. So it's important for us to gather that information from the stakeholder groups. Question number 2, what are the skills, quality, characteristics that they would like to see in their new superintendent? We take that information with what you've put together as a board, and then that becomes our rubric as we select and recruit candidates, so that your constituents groups have input into that process. Question number 3, we ask them, what are the issues here? If you could talk this new person coming in, what would you want him or her to know about this school district to be successful that first year? Every school district has issues. I was a superintendent for 16 years. Might be increasing enrollment, declining enrollment, bond issues. I've yet to find one that has more money than they need, but might be fiscal reductions, those types of things. Superintendents are not afraid of challenges. They just want to know what they are. And so as we talk to candidates, we share that information with them. Very important piece of the process is getting people involved, your constituent groups involved. We'll take that information and develop an announcement of vacancy, a promotional brochure. We're a full-time business located in Omaha, Nebraska, have full-time staff. They coordinate all of our searches there and take care of all that. And part of what we do is to develop the announcement of vacancy. This typically talks about your school district, your community, you as board members, your selection criteria, and this is available on our website, and it's also available on paper. Let's pass a couple around. In addition to preparing the announcement of vacancy, included in our fee, we post your vacancy with all the state school board associations, all the state administrator associations, all the colleges and universities that offer leadership degrees that lead to educational leadership. That's included in that fee. In addition, we have a website, and being one of the top national firms, we have between 60 and 80,000 hits a month on that website. It's one of the first places that people go when they're looking for a superintendent vacancy, so we get wide national exposure for you. We'll develop an application that reflects your criteria. And basically, we'll take that criteria and put that on a page and say, please write to your strengths in these areas. And that's going to become a piece that we use in screening candidates as they write that information. That's going to be one of the first pieces that we use, is to be able to do that. We're a turnkey operation. We do everything for you except interview candidates. We'll send out and receive all the applications. We process all the applications. The only time that we need someone from your district is to coordinate meetings, to make sure we have a time and a place for our meeting times, so there's no additional burden on your staff as we do that. On page 7, I want to talk a little bit in depth about this, because I know this was a concern that you had, and that's the recruitment of applicants. We talked about the advertising piece, and that's an important piece to get it out there, make sure people know that there's a vacancy here with the brochure and with the other advertisements. But we actively recruit people to the position. There's a number of ways that we do that. We are at American Association of School Administrators National Conference, have been for the past 8 years. We have a place there called Job Central, and we have an opportunity to meet potential candidates and interview them at that spot, knowing that there may not be a position this year, but one that might be coming up, and so that we know people that are out there. For the past 2 years, we have been present at the American Association Women's Conference and have done the same capacity there. We are at the National School Boards Conference every year and have been for the past 8 years. And for the past 2 years, we have done a presentation. Mrs. Dunn has done the presentations at the Southern Regional for National School Boards Conference this year in Little Rock and last year in New Orleans. And also NASB. You want to explain what that is?
National Association, National Alliance of Black Educators.
So we're working our network. We're out there taking a look at who's available, who's good. We do not have a stable of candidates. We don't have a group of people that we just move around every search. But we do track. We do track what we call the successes, the winners, knowing that sometime we may be recruiting them for the right job based on what you come up with. In addition to that, our network. And we have 75 consultants. You all know that from our literature across the United States. We use our consultants in every search to help recruit. Once we have a district, we've got the selection criteria, we send that to all of our consultants and say, who do you know that meets this profile? Who do you know that we can contact? Some of our best candidates are not necessarily looking for a job, but we're tracking their careers, we're going to be talking to them, and we're going to be actively recruiting them to your district. And I want to talk a little bit about the power of recruiting and maybe address at this time. No, we have not done a search in Tennessee. I know that's an issue. After you had your discussion, I knew that we'd be presenting. I sent an email out to our consultants and said, who do you know in Tennessee that we could work with to make sure that we had all the laws, regulations, those types of things. Within 24 hours, I had 4 names of people in your state that will be able to assist us to make sure that we have that information. 2 years ago, we had not done a search in Pennsylvania or Washington State. As of today, we've done 11 in one and 8 in the other. Last year, we had not done a search in Virginia or Mississippi. We've done 1 in one and 2 in the other. So we're breaking into states. And what I tell you, we give every one of our clients 100% of our attention. But if you're the first in the state, you get 125%, because we're based on reputation. And that's how we base our reputation, is coming in. Every search is a good search. But it's important that first one is stellar, to make sure that you all talk to your friends and neighbors and say they did a great job for us. So it's important that we have that. We'll work with you on assisting your compensation parameters. And what we do is we gather information from other districts that approximately the same size, same geographical area, those that have recently hired. We give you that information. We frankly are not invested at all with what you pay your superintendent, but we do want you to be competitive, and so we'll gather that information so you can make a determination of what that competition is to offer that salary. We keep all of the candidates informed throughout the process. If they don't have all their information in, our home office is contacting them and telling them what they need to get in to make sure that we have everything necessary to present candidates to you. Page 3, or Phase 3, page 8. This is the heart and soul of hiring a consulting firm. And that's our ability to screen candidates. Not only recruit them, but also to screen them. Because even if we've recruited them, we need to go deeper and find out what they're about and what they bring to the table. What we do, and I think we do this better than anybody in the United States, we start with their printed information. We read through that information. We read through the pieces of paper that they've submitted us. We read their applications where they've talked to their strengths and weaknesses as far as it appears to you. And then we begin our reference and background checking. In the 35 years I've been in HR, I've yet to find somebody who puts a reference down and doesn't like them. Know that if it's written there, that the person's going to speak highly of them. Understand that. We have our list of questions, our rubric, and we call those people and we ask them our list of questions. And we have 2 questions at the end that are really important. Second to last question, anything in this person's background, if it became public information, would be an embarrassment to the Board of Education. That's when we learned along the way. We used to say, anything I haven't asked you or any skeletons? The answer is no. But when you ask the question that way, anything in the background, if it became public information, we do sometimes find things out. Let me tell you, most of the time we don't, that there's nothing there, but it's important that we ask that. The last question we ask them, would you give us a name or 2 or 3 other people that could speak to this person's ability? They do. We call them. We ask them the same list of questions, including, would you give us a name or 2 or 3 other people who could speak to this person's ability? We go a minimum of 3 removed from those primary references as we screen candidates. And what we're looking for is consistency of answers. Strengths, weaknesses, whatever. If something's not ringing true, we continue to dig. We continue to look. So that when we come and meet with you, we are able to accurately present what those candidates bring as strengths and weaknesses to you. When we come and meet with you, we don't take anybody's name off the list. Anybody that applied for this position, they're your candidates, they're not our candidates. But we do develop a short list, a list that we think are most closely meeting what it is that you're looking for in your candidate. And as we're doing that, we are in constant contact with those candidates, and we will be calling them and say, congratulations, you made our first cut. Does not mean you're going to get an interview, but know that we will be presenting your name to the board as a possible candidate. Are you still interested in the job? Will you show up for the interview? Will you take the job if offered? I mean, it's important that we're in constant contact because we don't want to lose viable candidates at the end, to make sure that we're doing that. We'll work with you on developing your interview questions as we go through and do that. And that's an important piece because this is where you're going to be making most of your decision, is that face-to-face interview or interviews if we do more than one round. And it's important that you have questions that are open-ended and important to what you're looking for. And I always give an example from my background because it's such a glaring example. I was asked as I was interviewing for superintendency many years ago, they said, we just spent $300,000, you can tell us many years ago, we just spent $300,000 on educational technology. Today it'd probably be $3 million. But $300,000 on educational technology, what do you think about educational technology? Well, they gave me the answer. You know, I think it's great because you told me how much you invested. The question should have been, what's your philosophy of using educational technology and how do you think it enhances learning of students? So it's important that we construct with you questions so that you can adequately assess each of those candidates based on their responses to the answers. So we spend time doing that with you. Anybody that's not interviewed will receive a personal letter on your behalf from our office saying thank you for taking time being part of the process. When we get to the interview time, we take care of setting that up, creating a schedule that works for you and for the candidates, calling the candidates, making sure they're scheduled. Those stakeholder groups that we met with at the beginning, they now come into play again. And when we come in and meet with the stakeholder groups originally, we want to meet with everybody. We want everybody to come in. We don't want anybody to say they did not have an opportunity to give information or input into this process to us. Now, we know that we can't reach everybody, so we have survey forms and some other things that they're able to do that electronically if they wish to. When we get to the interview time, we ask that there be representative groups, and I use teachers as an example, that there maybe be 8 to 10 teachers that are representative of your teachers that will have an opportunity to meet the candidate. Same thing with your principals and your students and the other groups that you've set up. When we first started doing this, we had the chair people come in and meet with the board and talk about the candidates, found out they lobbied the board directly. Sometimes the teacher's candidate was number 1 and was the board's 4th candidate. And our evaluations from the board said that wasn't fun. to do it that way. We knew it was important, so we went back with our consultant and said, how do we do this to get meaningful input into the process, but keeping it in total control with the board of directors? What we do now is the focus groups meet the candidate. They have some questions, and we coach them through this. We talk about the process of doing that. And when they're done, they have a form which they fill out. And it says, John Doe or Jane Doe, here's what we liked about them, or here's questions we had about them. They put them in an envelope, they seal them, they turn them into a contact person. After you have met and interviewed all the candidates and you've had your discussion on the candidates, you then open and read those. And I sat with a board that debated one night for 2.5 hours, and they were deadlocked on 2 candidates. Either one of them would have been fine. We opened those after the 2.5 hours, and all the groups had one of them higher than the other one. So meaningful input into the decision as we did that. And I think that's an important part, is that people have meaningful input. When people are involved in a meaningful way, they support the decision, and that people will rally behind the decision that you make as you do that. So I think that's an important piece that we offer. Typically a 2-person decision. So when we set up the interview process, we make sure the spouse is involved with that process, that they accompany the candidate to the district. They have an opportunity to see the things that are important to them. Again, this is a 2-way decision-making process, and what we want to have happen is after your candidates have interviewed and they're getting ready to go home, they're going to say, boy, I hope they offer us the job. This is a great location. This is a great community. We want to move our family here. And so we work hard to get that information to the spouse so they have information so they can make that decision. We take care of making the arrangements for the candidates to come, working on a final interview schedule. Once you have chosen your final candidate and we have offered the job, we then call those that were interviewed. We thank them on your behalf for being part of the process. Again, we do everything for you except the interview. Phase 5, that's the piece that we attribute one of the big pieces that we attribute our retention to. After you have hired your new superintendent, we come back and work with you as a board and your new superintendent for the first year. And we have you identify 2 or 3 performance objectives for your new director. 2 or 3 things beyond the day-to-day operation of the school district, the normal job description, that you want this person to focus on that first year. After you've done that and the new superintendent participates in that, we then take the superintendent out and we turn to you as board members and say, what evidence will you accept that this person is making progress towards these objectives? And what is happening there is you are clarifying your objectives, you're clarifying your expectations of your new director. We then do a 6-month and a 1-year evaluation based on that. And we have found that that really helps that first-year transition. That first year can be a rocky time, and having someone to come in and facilitate that transition really helps. I mentioned the 1-year guarantee. We can do a 2-year guarantee. Sometimes we've done a guarantee for the term of the first contract, whatever that is. On page 13, I already told you the price is $11,500. There are additional expenses. I'd like to talk about those. And let me just say up front that we are willing to negotiate a cap on expenses to submit that to you as to what we think they would be, not to exceed. And if they're less, obviously, they'll be less. And here's what they are. If you choose media advertising, and that is typically the American Association of School Administrators website, that runs about $345 for a 30-day period, one very good national exposure and reasonable. Education Week, which is the major trade magazine for administrators, that's going to run anywhere between $1,400 and $2,500. But what our home office staff, they'll develop a copy-ready ad and get that to you with 1, 2, and 3 weeks, so you can make a decision on running that ad and how many times you want to run it and what it looks like. Long-distance telephone charges, talked about those. We start calling 2 and 3 deep. We've tracked that over the years. It runs about $100 total. Phone bills keep coming down, thank goodness. One of the few things that do. Travel and expenses for the consultants to the district. We're a service operation. We are only as good as our reputation. We travel on the cheap. And we do that on purpose because our reputation is built into that. I tell boards we don't sleep in our car, but a Motel 6 is good enough, and that we're going to do that. If there is ever a question about any of our expenses, we will take care of them because our reputation is far too important, and so that we can do that. But if you want, we will negotiate a set fee. Other things that we will, there's one other thing, a note I made here. You talked about the possibility of technology. It would be possible to have one or maybe two of those meetings electronically if you wanted to, using either GoToMeeting or Skype, which we use. And that's something that we could talk about, hold expenses down. If you wanted that, we would be able to do that, especially the second meeting where we review the input from the groups to do that. Also included there's a timeline, a summary, all the references from the past 3 years. I have some selected references. I don't lecture that much in my classes. Let me stop talking and answer your questions.
Thank you so much. Did anybody have a question on some things he's already said before we get into the question and answer session? Dr. Andrews, do you have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Phillips?
I can't remember if you said this or not. Do you conduct individual meetings with board members?
We have, and if that's something the board wants, we do. And that's something we would discuss with the board. We do the group, nominal group technique, but we have and do meet individually with board members. And the reason I say either way is each board is different, and we don't presume to have a cookie-cutter approach to every board.
Okay.
No, you can add that.
Who are the individuals that will actively conduct the search for your firm? Is this their full-time job?
The two of us. And no, it's not a full-time job for either one of us, even though we end up by giving it a lot of time and effort to do it, to be able to do that. Now, I'm going to tell you also, is it coming up on the sound? Can you hear? I'm talking loud enough. The two of us would be the primary people on site. There's going to be probably 3 or 4 others that will be assisting, that will screen candidates, prepare information, a lot of things to make us look good.
All right. Please talk about your experience with placing candidates in urban systems as opposed to other kinds of communities.
We have a number of urban settings that we have. Let me just take a little different track, and I will answer your question, I promise. We were doing a presentation in Pennsylvania. We just broke into Pennsylvania, and one of the people in the audience said, I see that 80% of your searches are rural communities. Guess what? 80% of the school districts in the United States are rural communities, and so that's a factor of the market. We have actively worked. We did Selma, Alabama.
I just mentioned it to him. I led the search in Selma, Alabama last year, and that's a pretty urban area. So, and even though, like I say, we're not full-time consultants on site, but we're there according to the calendar that we establish with you, and we meet we don't miss a beat.
Let me just add to that, even though they're not full-time consultants, they're all professionally trained consultants, and they go through a training yearly, and that's a requirement of being a consultant, that we have current consultants with current updates about what we're doing, so they go through that professional training. Additional urban ones, we did Allentown, Pennsylvania, we did Sioux City, Iowa, which has a high minority population. We did North Thurston, Washington, and Tukwila, Washington, which are urban settings, even though they're not a major city. They're just outside of Seattle is where they are. But the answer is yes.
Thank you. What is your retention rate for directors that you have placed?
And at the very beginning, I talked about 90% for 5, 2/3 for 10, and over 50% for the last 19 years. And we just want to wave that as a banner.
Thank you.
I think it's in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these may be something you've already touched on, but the reason why we're asking, so the general public that's listening, since we're live, we want to reiterate a few questions just in case they took a popcorn break or got a soda. We want to make sure that they hear.
All right.
How many times would you plan to be in the district, and how long of a stay would each time be for your visits?
We typically have four meetings, 3 with the board and 1 for the community visits. The board meetings typically run between 2 to 3 hours, and the community visit is going to depend on how many stakeholder groups you want us to meet with. It could be a day or 2 days. Certainly, we'd be able to get them all done in 2 days. We did Pulaski County, Arkansas, which is a district of about 18,000 that surrounds all Little Rock, and Mrs. Dunn and I did that, and we did 36 groups in 2 days.
And it's just dependent on the stakeholder groups that you select as to be part of it.
Board members, do you have any questions so far? Okay. If expenses will be charged in addition to your firm's fee, please provide an estimate of expenses incurred in similar searches.
Part of those will be determined on your choice for media advertising, but we took a look at the expenses outside of that, and I think we would be in the neighborhood of maybe $5,000. As I said, we will give you a firm amount, but I would need my business manager to go and put that together and show that to you as to what we're estimating on each of those, so you know what it is.
Will you negotiate your fee?
The answer to that is always yes, but I want to tell you one of our strategies, one of our business strategies when we come into the new state is to cut our fee. And so I believe that we're probably less than the other national firms to do that. So we've already negotiated on our behalf for you, but everything's negotiable.
If a vacancy occurs during the first 2 to 3 year period following the employment of a candidate recommended, will your firm go through the process of recommending other candidates with no additional charge to Murfreesboro City Schools?
We are with you until you've successfully hired your school director. And let me extend that answer a little bit. If we get down to the end and you finish your interviews and you say these are nice people, but we have not yet found our school director, we're still with you. Our fee's our fee. If that person leaves during that guarantee period, and if that guarantee period is for the length of your first contract, whatever, if you have a 3-year contract, we do it for 3 years, we'll come back and conduct that search for expenses. I mean, we would have advertising expenses and some other things, but the fee does not increase. The fee is the fee.
Any questions? So roll right along. How do you define recruit candidates in your commitment to recruit qualified applicants as used in your proposal?
The 3 things that we mentioned, one, the advertising, what's included in our fee, which is all state school board associations, all state administrator associations, all colleges and universities that have leadership development degrees. Also then extended media with the AASA website and Educational Week. But the most important one is that networking concept that I talked about of our 75 consultants actively recruiting and giving names to the 2 of us so that we can call and talk directly to them. There will be people that we will be visiting with, I know, that will say, I'm not ready or I'm comfortable here, and we will try to convince them that this is such a wonderful opportunity and a great board that they need to take a look at this opportunity. And we have been successful in doing that.
Do you actively seek highly qualified candidates from other school systems? If yes, in the same state or not?
We do actively look at other qualified candidates within the same state and other states. We do not go back to districts where we have placed candidates. If they become aware of the opening through our website and choose to apply, that's their choice. We don't actively recruit those people to do that. If they're in their first or second year, we're going to discourage them from applying. And again, that's our retention rate of keeping people where they are. Sustainability of leadership, if you get into the research, the sustainability of leadership is so crucial to student achievement that we don't want superintendents to be moving every 2 to 3 years. We want superintendents to come in and build a leadership team, work with the Board of Education, because that's been proven to be one of the hallmarks of improved student achievement.
How do you value input from stakeholders? Not about how the input is gained. Talk about how you incorporate the different or competitive elements of that input into manageable criteria/vision.
Well, we factor that into when we're doing the screening process. You know, the board automatically sets the criteria, but lending an ear to the stakeholders helps us to better screen the candidates. And normally, it parallels what the board wants.
As we do those input groups, we will be bringing back to you a list of everything that was said by each of those groups. I told you the questions we asked, here's the process. One of us writes where the other one talks. Then we read them back to the groups to make sure that we captured what they said. You're going to receive a complete listing of everything we said from each group. It's by group. There's no names, so it's anonymous to do that. We will take a look specifically at the question which says, what skills, qualities, characteristics would you like this new person to possess? We'll be looking for trends in that area. If there's anything different than what you've had, we're going to bring that to your attention. It's 99.9% of the time they're similar. It doesn't happen, but we're going to do that.
One other thing that we have had success in doing is involving stakeholder student groups. And, you know, children tell you the truth. And one thing about the input from the stakeholder groups, they also have an opportunity to talk about the Board of Education and its function. And I tell you, I'm sure that would be favorable.
Thank you. How do you weight questions in importance to the skills and qualifications of an applicant?
When we work with you on constructing your interview questions, we will take your criteria that you've developed. We have a data bank of hundreds of questions, and so we'll start with those, and we'll pull some questions that we'll put under your criteria. Have you take a look at those questions and see if they accurately reflect what you want to ask. Sometimes we combine those. Sometimes the board said, I really want to ask this, and so those are your questions. So we'll have your criteria, and we'll have you pick maybe 2 to 3 questions that are going to be reflective of your selection criteria, plus what we've heard from stakeholder groups. Then we're probably going to add about 8 or 10 general questions that are going to be reflective of things. Remember that last question? What are the issues here? If you could talk to this new person coming in that you'd want them to know. We find sometimes there are things that we need to ask additional questions on, and so we'll add that into the process as we do that. But your criteria that you've selected and with your stakeholder group is going to be ranked. What do you see as your relationship with this board? I'll let the board member.
We represent boards. We do not represent applicants. The board is in control of this entire process. So we lend an ear. We just facilitate all of the work and take the drudgery out of the hard work for you.
What does your firm do to help assure that the candidate that the board picks will be successful?
The one-year transition piece, that Phase 5 is listed there with performance objectives, working directly with you as a board and your new director, clarifying expectations as we go through that year. We have other things that we will talk to boards about. We have a process called developing board operating principles, where the leadership team will define their operating principles and how they're going to work. And we have additional things that we will recommend to you, but again, your choice if that's something that you wish to do or not, that we have found to extend the success of the placement of the school director.
And that Phase 5 is enhancing board and director relationships. And that's what it really focuses on, enhancing those relationships. And also helping the transition period.
Do any of the board members have any questions at this point that they'd like to ask? Okay. What questions have we not asked that we should have asked?
I don't know if there's any that you haven't asked, but we have some for you, which would be, if we were selected as your firm, how soon could we start?
Oh, you're
Tomorrow.
truly asking the question. I'm
Tomorrow.
sorry. I was waiting on a multiplicity of them to come on.
Well, I don't know. We're not.
Yeah, if you're picked, and we hope to hurry up and get this process done, we would get with Ms. Baker and let that group know ASAP.
We would like to, if we're selected, we would like to meet with you as soon as possible, and we'd like you to have calendars with you at that meeting, because it's important that we get a calendar and a timeline set up that's going to meet your needs. to make sure that we're doing that. One of the advantages about being out early in the year is that you're going to have pick of candidates. Usually the first ones out of the chute have the opportunity to have some of the first candidates to pick from. Those that wait till very late in the year, sometimes we're waiting for, we have some leftovers. Not that they're not good candidates, but the numbers may not be as good. So we would want to start and advertise as soon as possible.
Dr. Andrews?
I have my usual couple of questions. One of them is if the perfect person walked up to us and said, you know, I'll take your job, you know, and we're in the middle of all this, but you haven't finished your work, and you look at them, you do your background, you say, you know, this is really an amazing person, I can't believe, you know, whatever. We'd love to have that happen. It probably won't. But if that did happen, would you prorate your charges?
Yeah, we have had that happen in other situations where the board has said, as we've got into the process, we think we want to just promote one of our internal candidates. That happens. And so it's a little different than what you're saying as you do that. If there's something less, if our services are done before we've delivered complete services, of course, we would prorate them.
Okay.
But you brought up a comment, or you brought up something in my mind that I didn't think about in my presentation. That's internal candidates. Don't know if you have any or not. But one of the advantages of hiring an outside firm is we're neutral outsiders. You create the measuring stick. We measure everybody equally against that stick. We do recommend if the person's not meeting the criteria that you've come up with, you do not do courtesy interviews. And then we tell those people to do that. But we're neutral outsiders. You tell us what you want us to measure them against, and we measure everybody equally.
So, can I finish my other question, or do you want to go on?
No, go ahead.
The other question was, Mrs. Mathis is retiring as of October 1st. We anticipate we may need an interim. I guess there may be people that don't want or are contracted, their contracts don't run out until June 30th, is what I understand. So would you assist us in finding an interim director?
Yes, and we've done that in numerous searches. And again, that's that networking piece. There's 4 people we've identified in this state that would help us identify retired superintendents that would be available, or other entities, not necessarily just retired, that would be available. And we have worked with boards to hire interim superintendents. We also coach you through how to structure that contract. So if you have somebody that can come on in December for 31st, that you're not obligated to that person beyond that. I mean, just some contractual things. And again, that's the experience of having done this, that we can answer some of the questions that you might not think of.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Would you help us with the interim without charge?
Yeah, there's no charge. Well, I shouldn't say that. If you hire our firm, there's no charge.
Right.
You did say that you would conduct sessions with community and the question I want to ask you about that is, how many times do you think you need to meet with those groups? What do you find to be effective?
Okay. Initially, we meet with the community groups, and he told you about those questions that we ask, the input that we get, and we put that in written form to you. The only other time we stay in touch with them because we ask each group to nominate a leader and a co-chair among themselves. And those are the people that we stay in touch with, and they are the ones that stay in touch with the group. Okay? And at our last meeting, when we bring the list of finalists, we ask that we meet with the stakeholder chairs, and at that point, we will give them, again, their charge that we've given them during the community visits, so that they'll know their role the day that the finalists come and what they're supposed to do.
Just an addition to that, if I could. In that charge, the obvious one is that form that we fill out and tell them how to do that, how to ask questions. There's another piece that we tell them. You're selling yourself and your community to the candidate, and that's an important piece. And we talk about how they do that, how they showcase who they are, what you have to offer to the candidate to be able to do that. So there's 2 things that we ask them to do.
Mr. Campbell?
Estimated time frame?
2 to 3 months. Can do it faster if you need be. This time of the year, I don't know that you would want to do it any faster. If we're hired, we'll take a look at some target dates and suggest those to you. But that, again, this is your process. So.
And one other thing that we like to ask boards to do in Phase 3, to give us a minimum of 3 weeks to do our reference checks so that we can do a thorough job of that.
Okay. Any questions on this end? Based on your knowledge of Murfreesboro City Schools and Murfreesboro, what are the assets and challenges we will face in recruiting a top-notch professional to be our next director of schools?
Let me start this. I'll say, first of all, I'm not just stroking you, because I'm a board member and I've had the pleasure of seeing boards function well and some not so well. But that will be a drawing point for you, because superintendents, recruits love to come to places where there is unity and the team camaraderie. And I think that that's an asset. The fact that your city is progressing is another factor. It's a lovely place to live. As a matter of fact, Dr. Jacobson and I stopped at the Cracker Barrel to have a cup of coffee, and I ran into, well, you know how we are from the South. We start up a conversation like nothing. So there was a gentleman sitting on the bench, and I said, "Are you from Murfreesboro?" Of course, I knew he was. And he said, "Yes." And he said, "Are you?" "I know. I'm from Louisiana. What brings you here?" So I told him our purpose here. And he happened to be a 30-year retiree from this district. And he was in maintenance, Mr. Bobby Stevens. So I just think that your community has a lot of assets. I looked at the economic development factors there. I looked at your number one employers. State Farm, of course, is one that, is that a regional office?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because some of the workers from our area that used to be in Monroe office have relocated there. And I looked at some of the, you just have a lot of potential. The infrastructure, we were complimenting the infrastructure as we came in. And we both said that with a board such as yours, who wouldn't want to work here?
I just want to echo your location, the geographics, the socioeconomics of the area. Those are attractive, and they're going to be attractive. I do want to say again, when we talk with recruits and they're talking to us and asking about, you know, the first question out of their mouth is not how much does this pay. That's the second, but it's not the first. The first question is, how's the board? How's the board? And I just echo what Mrs. Dunn, what we observed from your meetings is that that'll be, we would refer to you as an easy recruit. We recruit across the United States. Last year we did 2 Indian reservations in South Dakota. Those were tough recruits. We place quality people there, and they're doing a great job. But to try and recruit to different areas is sometimes more difficult than others. Yours will be a good recruit.
If there are no other questions,
I have one more question.
Okay.
I didn't ask anybody else. Somebody did volunteer it, but what are the average? What's the average number of real applicants that your firm usually gets, including the ones you recruit actively?
It really is dependent on the time of the year and the location of the school district. 2 years ago, I would have been telling you maybe 12 to 15. That has changed, and the numbers are coming up. We've had districts like yours where we've been in the high 20s to 30s as we've done that. Can't guarantee anything. I mean, if you want me to guarantee numbers, I can do it. We have a database that people sign up with us, and they get all of our applicants, and there's 350 people, and I could convince 40 of them that they need to apply here. What it is how many quality candidates do we get for you, and that's what we're after, is quality candidates.
And I'll echo on this. The last search that I recently did was Greenville, Mississippi, and I had 34 applicants. And like Dr. Jacobson said, we want quality applicants because we're as good as our last search.
Dr. Andrews?
And about how many of the applicants that you place were people who you had to talk into applying? And do you have any idea of percentage of that?
We started tracking that last year, and I'm going to tell you it's a very low percentage, maybe 10% that we're doing that.
So most of them they're just seeing the advertisement and getting in touch with you, and you have a low.
There are some, and that's what I haven't been able to track, that one of our consultants will call and say, you need to take a look at this, get your information in. And so we do have our other consultants that are doing that recruiting piece that may be on the market looking for jobs, and we know that they're quality people. And so that piece happens also.
Well, seeing no more questions, we certainly like to thank you, Mrs. Dunn and Dr. Jacobson, for coming and doing an excellent presentation to this board. Thank you for your time. Is it anything that you would like to say or anything else to be said by this board?
We thank you for your time. We thank you for the diligence that you put into this process. Again, as we observed your process on August 3rd, you gave us a lot of time, a lot of thought, and because of that, whether you hire us or somebody else, you're going to have a good process because of your thoughtfulness.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
For chance being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for coming down here. Thank you.
Have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Board members, let me know, do you need a 2-minute break or a 3-minute break, or you ready to proceed on? All righty.
3-minute break, please.
3-minute break for the board, a 3-minute recess for this board. 5-minute recess for the board. Board members, at this time, we're going to go into our discussion of the selection of our search firm, our consulting firms. We have heard some excellent presentations, and at this time, we need to have some discussion and make a decision on who we want to help us through this process. The floor is open for discussion. And we have someone that's going to write for us tonight, Mr. Campbell, for any discussion we need to put up here to kind of compare.
Maybe we could go ahead and put, I guess, TSBA presented
All
first,
righty,
then
please.
Hiya, then what was it,
McPherson.
Jacobson, We could call them
PA, what's up?
Hiya, HYA, and then want to say MJ, and then,
MJ over here, McPherson?
is that right?
We know
Yeah.
what we're talking about, don't we?
Yes,
That's
sir.
right. That's what I know we know to talk about.
Let's compare costs.
Okay.
What would we say? Put $1 sign with them, 3 with Hiya, and 2 with MJ. Is that sort of
Yeah, it's going to put the price up
okay?
there. TSBA was 8,500.
8,500.
Well, can they, 20,000 if they do what's comparable to the other two?
Yes.
That's true. Yeah, put /20,000 maybe underneath.
That'll be fine.
All right.
Was Hiya 1150?
Now, is this-
11,500.
19.
Oh, I'm sorry, 19,500. Yeah,
Plus
Plus
consultant,
expenses?
right. Yeah,
4,500.
yeah.
I'm gonna put down here 4,500.
Yeah.
Okay. MJ was
11,500.
11,500.
Yeah, plus 5, plus media. And now they're gone. I remembered another question I had about that, but that's okay.
Time frame, they were all about the same.
They were all the same.
Time frame? That-
They all staggered around 2 to 3 months and 4 to 5.
TSBA was more saying 3 to 6 months, I think, and the others were saying 2 to 3 months. Is that right? 2 to 3 months on MJ.
4 months. Yeah, 3 to 4 months.
4 to 6.
3 to 4.
TSBA 3 to 6. Hiya, didn't they say 2 to 3? I think that's what he said.
Yes, he said, I thought he said 3 to 4.
I think he said 2 to 3.
Okay.
I was surprised.
Well, we'll say 3 months and split the
Okay.
difference.
Yes.
All right. I wrote it down right here. 2 to 3 months on theirs.
Good.
Sorry.
2 to 3 months?
2 to 3. Uh-huh.
MJ?
The shortest time frame they said was 6 weeks. They could do that, but I think they said
Wouldn't be a good time to do that.
right. What did
No
they
reason
say?
to.
What did they say? 3 to 4.
2 to 3.
They said 2 to 3 also.
2 to 3 months?
Okay.
I think both said they'd help with an interim without charge. I don't think we asked that question at TSBA.
Right.
What about, all of them are gonna have community meetings,
Yes.
aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm not gonna put that up to all the time.
Well, that's only if they do the TSBA.
Well,
20 days.
TSBA, if it's 8,500.
They would do them.
Okay.
I'd say that Hiya and MJ had really thorough reference checks that went way beyond. TSBA, I didn't get that same information. What about you guys?
kind of thought they did because they were going to do southeast, they said.
You
No,
said
I'm
background.
talking background reference
Reference
checks.
check?
Yeah, where you go and you ask three levels down.
I thought you said they kept on and on and on, but maybe I'm wrong. But I thought they did.
I didn't hear that.
No.
Okay. Sorry.
So if you can write just reference plus, a deep reference for whatever those, and then I think that's quite important. How about success rates? TSBA really didn't know how long they'd had people in.
Oh, the background check.
Well, that's sort of with the reference background check.
Yeah, Hazard was the only one that said they did a background check using the detective agency and checking
Okay.
credit and all the other records. That was very intense, more than just
Okay.
calling
No,
references.
you can leave the reference there, because leave it under MJ. Leave the reference under MJ.
Well, I
And then
would
we'll put
consider the
background.
reference as the background check.
No, that's two different things. They're two different things. The background check is more criminal and,
And financial,
yeah,
those
yeah,
indicate they did
so
that.
Thank you, Ms. Baker.
background under HIA.
And they didn't give us a cost for that.
Yes, they did. It's included.
He said it
now.
was included in the fee, is what he said.
They used to charge separately. They no longer do. The company that they used to use, they now include it in their price. That's what he said.
I have some observations I would like to share that I'm not sure can be easily qualified on our whiteboard.
All right.
Go ahead and list them. Go ahead.
The Dr. Jones from HIA, when Ms. Wade asked the question about the assets of our system and the challenges, I really liked that Dr. Jones immediately focused that answer on our system. He knew our scores. He knew how those scores rated in the state. He talked about the strength of our system. When other people answered that question, they focused on the community. They talked about things that were a little more general. And that's one of the things I liked about HIA and Dr. Jones. Another thing that I personally liked was when asked about placing people in urban systems, candidates in urban systems, as opposed to other types of communities, he immediately talked about his experience in Athens and the dichotomy there between the professional university communities and the communities of poverty where families are struggling with many challenges. And I think that he understood there some of the things that we and our teachers and our families experience here in Murfreesboro City Schools. And I think that was a very poignant, telling comment about his personal experience and his understanding of the issues. So I don't know how you would qualify that on our whiteboard, but I do think those are important, telling things about the professionals that would be doing this search.
And
Dr. Andrews.
another thing that I would pick up is it looked like HIA said that 60% of the people that they place are people that they actively recruited that would not have otherwise applied for a job. So they very strongly are looking for people who are in successful positions and are likely to do the same again. I think he said it was about 10% at the MJ, and I don't think TSBA really does that. I think that's something they didn't do. So that may be why. The other thing I saw was that I think HIA had the highest success rate in that. I think they had an amazing number. 80 to 90% retired from that place or still were in position, and they've been in business for many years. So I was really impressed with that. I mean, we want to hire somebody who is going to be here for a long time and provide the stability that Mrs. Dunn talked about, that, you know, you want to have a director of schools in place for a long period of time, and you want to find somebody really, really good. So I was impressed that, I think, bottom line, I think Hiya looked like they had the best success. We don't know what TSBA's success was. They didn't know. But McPherson Jacobson had good success, though. That's what I picked up out of that.
Are there any more comments or anything else any board members would like to say or not say?
I do.
Mr. Campbell?
I'm just going from my notes. TSBA said that most of their directors were there for at least 4 to 5 years. I remember that part. They have no additional charges for any of your, expenses other than what you're going to have, when you bring candidates in and things like that. I'm not saying it's always the best thing to go with the least amount of money, but I don't know that we want to get,
I understand your point, Mr. Campbell.
We're all, and you have, and I have, and I'm sure everybody has. There's already the discussion about the money factor out in the community.
And I wanted to make.
But I don't know that that's. I think we need to do whatever we need to do to get a quality person. And if it means spending a little bit more, then that's what we'll do.
You want to finish your comment?
Yes. Oh, no. I think you make an excellent point, Mr. Campbell, is that what's most important is that we do what we need to do to get a qualified candidate. Anyone who's ever been to my house and seen my 18-year-old sofa knows that I do not spend money readily. But I do believe that it is important to do what is necessary to get the best qualified candidate, because our children and our teachers deserve that. So that's the way I'm looking at that.
Dr. Buttram?
Well, I was just going to agree with Mr. Campbell, too. I don't necessarily think that we should go with the lowest, but I have heard some concerns in the community since our last board meeting. People have asked, why can you all not do a search yourself? Of course, I explained to them some of the processes that would have to be done in the search, and we do not have time, having full-time jobs as a board, to be able to do some of those things. But I do know that it is a concern, and I think that we should not take that lightly. We've also we've got districts around us. I know Cheatham County, they're doing their own search. I believe they received 19 candidates, and I believe there are other districts who are doing searches now that we're hearing are getting a lot of candidates. So some community members have even suggested, why don't you just take applications, see who you get, and if you don't feel like you got a good pool there, then go with the search firm. But why not try to ask first? Of course, I told them that was not just my decision, that would be a decision of the boards, but they did voice that concern.
Are there any more comments?
If we look at money comparison, okay, and it seems to be, but you're looking at $24,000 here. The most you're looking at over here is 20. You're looking at what? 17 or 18, maybe 16 at dawn. I don't know.
Yeah.
We really didn't get deep into McPherson's other expenses. I'm pretty sure when those folks travel to us, that's not in that 11,005. and the 5 on, it kind of troubled me a little bit about the media costs when I heard another make a presentation that they were strictly technical. There would not be any brochures printed, and the brochures were nice that they did, but I was looking at that. Dr. Butcher and then Mrs. Andrews.
The difference in the 8,500 to 20,000 for TSBA, what caused the jump when it goes to a national search? Was it just the advertising for the professional journals?
That's all I got out of it when she explained it, was the advertisement.
You don't have their book?
I've got it.
Yes, but
It's not in here.
that's what I'm understanding, is that it's just that jump would be because we advertise in national journals. And I think we probably have someone here on staff that would be able to advertise at least in the national journals, but we would still be able to get a regional search with the 8,500. Plus, like all of our presenters said, once everything has gone out on the internet, it becomes national. So with the innovation of technology today, I think that everything we do is national, even though we wouldn't call it a national search. But if the others are doing a national search just because they put it in a national publication, then we could also do that possibly. So there may be a few things that we could do to help curb the cost here.
Dr. Andrews and then Ms. Phillips.
Yeah, I think there may be things that we could do to curb the cost with each one of those. I think they all said that they would modify what they did depending on what we wanted. Like there could be an electronic meeting, which would cut some of that, 4,500 or the 5,000. Also, I think with McPherson-Jacobson, we could probably say we don't want to advertise in the national journals, because if Haya thinks you don't need to, well, you probably don't need to. We could also say, hey, we don't want the brochures, we just want to go totally electronic. I am concerned with TSBA about not having the depth of references. UT got mud all over its face when they hired a president without doing due diligence. They did not go deep enough. And we don't want to make that mistake. We want to be really careful about that and get the information from we've got to dig deep, because you don't want to get the information from people who are like, he's great, can't wait till he leaves here, or something. And that happens. Believe me, it happens. So I really would like to have the assurance of a really thorough reference check. And I think if we don't have a background check included, we should pay for a background check. I guess personally, I'd lean toward the Haya or the MJ choice myself, because of their track records and their deep reference checking, because this is just really, really critically important. It's the most important thing that we do as a board, is hiring our one employee. I know that it may sound like, okay, you're spending almost twice as much as the other, but that's a small percentage of what that person's salary is going to be over a long period of time, and it's a very small percentage of our budget. We have a $58 million budget that this person is going to control and take care of for us. They're going to develop the budget. They're going to be hiring and firing. They're going to be setting all kinds of they're going to be setting the standards for our principals and teachers. So to me, I know $10,000 is a lot of dollars in anybody's individual household. For us, I think when you have a $58 million business, that's not much. And I think that it could be worth it. So I think we ought to pick the best firm. But I understand the wanting to save money, too. I do. I understand that. That's just sort of way I'm leaning. But I'll support whatever the board ends up deciding.
Thank you, Dr. Andrews.
Thank you.
I think Ms. Phillips was next, and then
Yes.
Ms. Toppin.
I had three other observations over listening to the presenters and that I had noted. Dr. Jones, I was appreciative of the fact that he was sensitive to the cultural differences. He expressed that sensitivity about us being a system, a southeastern system, and focusing on that. I think that was important to be able to, acknowledge and recognize that there are differences, and those differences come into play into someone's ability to be successful. The second thing that I'd like to share is that when he talked about how, not being a banker himself, he asked different questions, I could tell then that he was able to value different experiences. And when we talk about including our varied stakeholders in this, I felt like he and his team would be able to value people who are not necessarily in education and value their input, and I think that's important. And we want to involve all the community, and all the input is of value. And then thirdly, I appreciated that Dr. Jones' personal background was in the elementary school arena. I felt like that gave him a real understanding of our particular system. It's unique, our K-6 system, pre-K through 6 really now. And I felt that these three additional observations really gave him and his organization, Hazard, Young, and Atea, is that how it's pronounced? A leg up. So those are some more observations.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Mr. Hopper?
Y'all should be really upset because as I drive home tonight, I'll think of things that I wish I'd said to you that Ms. Baker tells me is illegal for me to call you back and tell you, but you should be really disappointed that you didn't hear the things that I think of as I'm driving home tonight. But, anyway.
The whole board.
Oh, okay. You kept looking at me.
Well, you too, Butch. You don't remember what I'll tell you when I'm here. No, I thought all three of them, as I heard each one, as we went through them, I thought, well, man, that's good, and it's this is really a difficult process. I do feel like that the HIA and the MJ folks in their written material as well as their comments tonight, they gave a better detailed explanation of the steps in the process and were more organized and were probably better prepared to coach the board through this process that we're going through. I like being able to hear them talk and get to meet the people and hear about their experience as far as the retention rates. I thought the two private firms were better than that, and I like the larger firm that's got more contacts, and I really want us to hire an outstanding superintendent, a director, or whatever you want to call, and it may take a broader search and hopefully in the Southeast, but I hope we don't be short-sighted on the selection on this. I do still continue to have, and I don't know how they bounced out. I wish I'd asked it. I have some concerns about the ethical restrictions that the TSBA would have on contacting candidates at their member schools and trying to get them to leave the school where they are and come to us with both of us being members of TSBA. I just think the search, if we get someone who is working now and is successful and is a good superintendent, I think they're going to have to actually get out and call those people. And I don't think it's just running ads in the newspapers what this is all about. So, and I agree with Dr. Andrews' comment that we've got a $58 million budget, and if we spend $3,000 or $4,000 more on finding a good candidate and a good manager, that person can save us that much money in 1 year's budget. So I don't think we need to be short-sighted on the money. I can sympathize with the public questioning what we're doing, but we all have got to remember, and you'll learn as you're on the board for a while, we have information that a lot of people in the public don't have, and it's our job and our responsibility to do the right thing. I'll remind you again that this person is going to be the manager of 1,000 employees. So this is not just an academic position that we're looking for. This is a large organization, and we need to choose wisely when we select a candidate for this job. Thank you very much.
Ms. Duggan.
I think one question we should deal with is, do we want to put a cap on our spending on the front end? I know that MJ said that they would be willing to talk with us about the amount we wanted to spend, because some of that with the media wouldn't necessarily need to be spent, but I think we would need to have in mind a cap, so we kind of know what we are working with. The other thing is, we haven't included any cost up there about how much it might cost to bring in candidates. If they're all local people, if they live somewhere in the state, they can drive in. But if we were to bring people in from other places, you have that expense, and that's something we haven't discussed. The other thing I think we need to remember is that regardless, if we were to do our own search or if we go with a firm, that as the board, we drive this process. It is our responsibility to drive the process. They are working for us, and they would need to, they've given us an outline, but it is our responsibility to drive that process. And the other thing, I guess, is that I know all of them talked tonight about helping us set the criteria for a director. But I believe that that is still our major responsibility, that we set that criteria. And particularly if there were to be any search done ourselves without hiring a director, we would have to have that criteria, first of all, because I would hate to think that we would even consider putting out an application without having some criteria to go along with it. And, two of them did say they would help with an interim, and I do hope that is something that we discuss in much greater detail very soon.
Dr. Andrews.
I just had one other comment. One thing that I was impressed with was the leadership profile assessment from HIA, and I think that they had where you rank order the importance of characteristics and skills, and this would be available to everyone on the web. We could send it home. They said send it home in backpacks. We would fill it out, and then they would use this along with us to help us come up with who we're looking for. And I really, they had the three similar questions that the other two groups had, but I liked the additional information of ranking, and I think that we would also have input into what those 10 things were that we were going to end up ranking. But I thought that just showed real methodical thought. I think Ms. Phillips and I can tend to be. I don't tend to be as measurement oriented, and I think you kind of look at things similarly to me. Big picture, you can sort of see what you think, but I'm not as much good at measuring. But this kind of thing helps me measure, and I think it would help us measure and come up with a fair way to evaluate candidates. And one of the advantages of having a firm that would help us out, and I think Mr. Jacobson said that well, is that we do, I think as a board, it's valuable to us to have someone who, or a group who doesn't have a horse in the race, who's going to be very objective and help us find the best candidates to get in that final group, and help us crystallize what our own thinking is. And I think Mrs. Duggan's exactly right, that we are the ones driving this process. We are the ones making the decision. I think it's wonderful to have professionals who can help us focus and figure out what we do want and help us come to a decision. I think that can be very useful.
Well, we've had some wholesome discussion, and you have something you need to say?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say there was one more difference I noted, and that was the amount of days that each consulting firm said they would spend in our town. Hiya said 6 to 7 days. McPherson and Jacobson said 4 days. And TSBA, I think it was 3 days. But I'm not positive about TSBA. Does anybody else have that in their notes?
Talking about their meeting with groups.
The days they would
Total
spend in
number
our
of days here.
community.
It was similar, if I recall.
Okay. So, and I agree that the absolute, besides having professionals who do this and on a regular basis and have therefore a lot of experience with it, the benefit of having a consulting firm do this is the fairness and the neutrality that they bring to the game.
Mr. Hopper?
I have a motion. I move that we approve commencement of negotiations to employ Hazard, Young and Associates to conduct a search and authorize Ms. Baker and Ms. Wade to negotiate the terms of the contract to be presented to the board. And when I say that we had some comments in there about discounts on fees and capping some expenses and those type things, and let you two work it out and bring it back to the board. So that would be my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second that we have on the floor, that Hiya would be the selection of the board. Is there any discussion? Ms. Ridley?
Yes.
Could you please call the roll?
Dr. Andrews.
Aye.
Dr. Buckman.
No.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Duggan.
No.
Mr. Hopper.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Ms. Wade.
Yes. Thank you for your discussion on this. It's been very good that we've had a chance to discuss the ones that have come in and introduced their firms to us. We've come up with Hiya that I'll get with Ms. Baker and we'll talk to them about representing us. If there's any discussion or anything further after this that you need, if you would direct that to Mrs. Baker, so we can get together, and if you would pose all questions to Mrs. Baker from this point. And let me thank you as a board for your time that you have put in. And Dr. Buttram, I was going to make a comment on something that you said. It is always good when the public has the type of faith in you that you can get it done without consulting with the outside firm. But all of us as board members know how hard it is for us to set a time to meet and hold to it because of our schedules. Getting this organization in to help us out does take some of that load off the back of this board. It is still our responsibility and will continue to be our responsibility to carry out our job that we were elected to do. I know this board will do it, but seeking the help of someone to do some of our footwork will really help us all out. But certainly I want to thank the public that has spoke to the board members and put that faith in this board that we could do it without this help. But like David has said, sometimes they just don't realize a lot that we'd have to come up against that we would just not have time as a board to do. Now, Dr. Andrews, you had something you want to say?
I wanted to say two things. One is I just wanted to thank each board member, every one of you, for helping me worked through this process, for helping all of us work through it. I think everybody made really valuable contributions, and I really appreciate that. And I thank Ms. Wade for organizing this in a way that it could be, that we could come to a decision tonight, and I think a healthy decision. And thank you very much, Ms. Wade.
Thank you. We couldn't dare leave tonight without thanking Mrs. Baker, because we laid a lot on her at one time to do for us, and she did it with a smile. And I know there's probably things she'd like to say, but certainly we're appreciative of the hard work, and then we're putting some more on you to help us do, and certainly we're appreciative of all you do to help us.
Well, thank you, and I think Ms. Ridley
Yes.
definitely helped assist in this process. So, thank
She's a
you.
workaholic, so
She
we'll slow
helped
her down.
out a lot.
And all of the rest of our staff
Yes.
who's here with us on this long night,
Yes.
and guests too. Thank you.
Ms. Ridley has the potential of helping the next person come along and do a fabulous job, because she knows an awful lot about running this school system.
Now, before we leave and ask for an adjournment, there is a meeting on the 19th, board members. This is a time that if you got something you want on that agenda, you would need to say it now. You don't need anything, or we've already set it for the 19th. Is it set for the 19th? No.
Yes.
Ma'am?
It is set for the 19th.
And we have the agenda discussing the interim director. Hopefully, the
I know
HIAC
that's on
can be
there, but just
here.
in case.
Do you want Hazard and Young, the company there at that meeting? Do you want that to be your first meeting with the company?
Yes.
I would hope so.
Okay.
Yes. Is there anything else? We added a few things at the last meeting that we wanted. Do you remember?
We were talking about the criteria and the timeline. That is what has to be.
Yes. Okay, so we've got that resolved. Well, and they did say that they would help us with getting an interim, and that is something that we would definitely need to discuss at the next meeting, how we'd like to proceed with that as a board, and let them know how we want to proceed. Is there anything else, board members, that we need to add to the agenda, or is there anything else before we ask for an adjournment? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Oh, yes, you can run now.
Hey, we're free.